Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 955 of the news. And it's good to see you once again. And we've already had some lag this early in the stream. It's kind of crazy. But also, we got very big news today coming out of Israel and Ukraine, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Sorry for the lag issues, by the way. This is some of the earliest times that we've ever seen this happen. But we will be trying to power on through and make sure to get on to reporting this news. And we certainly do have incredibly major news today. And really quickly, before I get into belting off our summary of the news today, let me make sure that our connectivity is fine. And it does appear that it is far more nominal than it was just a second ago. So, without further ado, let me get into the news summary today, because we do have incredibly big news. It does sound as though that the intelligence may be highly credible that the Russians are going to strike Ukrainian nuclear power plants as a form of retaliation against the state of Ukraine and also against the West at large. We have been able to hear that the Polish President Duda made a statement today stating that Poland would directly intervene in a military fashion if such an attack was to occur against Ukrainian power plants. A major escalation, if any, has been seen over the current situation so far, and adding a lot more credibility to the statement that Grillo Budanov has made that the Russians are planning on conducting these strikes, as the Polish have apparently reviewed the evidence and found it to be highly credible as well. At the exact same time, we are hearing from the Israeli Ministry of Defense that a ground invasion of Lebanon is an imminent certainty. We have been hearing that Israeli airstrikes have continued within the area of Lebanon so far today, and it does seem as though the Israelis are now on the path to begin an actual conventional war within the area of southern Lebanon, driving Hezbollah forces north of the Litani River and also stopping them from conducting any further hostile actions directly along the Israeli border. We will be watching this situation as much as we can. We are seeing a lot of diplomatic maneuvers once again, and these appear to be the final diplomatic maneuvers leading into an absolute war, or a total war within the but can everyone...
I don't know why either. It's like, what's the hurricane causing it or what? Because I see on their YouTube end right here, it's like really, really low bit rate, like crazy low.
It is insanely low, and hopefully this has fixed it. Let's see if it has. It doesn't seem to have really fixed it all too much. So we're hopefully, if anyone can hear me right now. Matthew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I'm just going to try to stall for just a second because maybe it'll clear up. I will say this. I saw a news article today saying that China had hacked some of the ISPs in the United States, the internet service providers. I'm not sure if this maybe has something to do with it. This is so unusual, like this bad of lag. And the weird thing is we can still hear each other on Discord for the most part. So it's on YouTube's end, it seems like.
It really does seem like it's on YouTube's end because the Wi-Fi is fine. It looks like our connectivity on OBS is figures at the moment about above 4,000 kilobytes per second, but now it's once again flatlining. It is flatlining again. So we are having some incredibly bad lag issues. I'm terribly sorry, everyone, that we're not able to belt through our news summary like we normally would right now, and we're having to try and see and wait out what's going on right here, because it's certainly nothing on our end, as the Wi-Fi is being picked up at 100% at this moment, and it appears that everything on our end leading up to the stream has been working perfectly fine. So a huge apology for that, everyone. It does seem as though the lag storm has finally passed over us, and we may be able to get on into the news summary, as we do have a lot of major news to cover, meaning that this lag is really landing on one of the most unfortunate of nights, as today is also a massive news day like yesterday. But moving on from that, and Matthew, once again, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, and so with that, we are going to be moving back into our news summary and recapping some things that we've already said, just in case if you all have not heard it because of the lag issues. Inside of Poland, we have been hearing that apparently intelligence has been corroborated that the Russians may be planning to strike nuclear power plants inside of Ukraine, and the Polish have pledged that they will be conducting direct military intervention if such a situation arises. Meanwhile, inside the Middle East, we have been able to hear the Israeli Ministry of Defense declaring that they will be conducting a ground invasion within the area of southern Lebanon, and that a war is is most likely going to be imminent within this region. Now, moving on to the rest of the news that we were not able to get to just a moment ago, we were able to hear that within the Russian Federation, specifically within the city of Moscow, that there is apparently some hypothetical scenarios that have been brought up by the Russian government in terms of nuclear wargaming, which have been incredibly interesting today, and once again have been trying to move into the nuclear saber rattling that we've seen many such times before. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have been making significant gains in the area south of the Reconstruction River and have been advancing towards the town of Glishkovo, taking a significant amount of ground today, also capturing the town of Veselo, and also gathering more intelligence showing that the Russians are trying to create stopgap measures to help out the trapped brigade south of the Reconstruction River that is currently dealing with this unstoppable Ukrainian advance within this direction. Meanwhile, offensive actions by the Russian Federation in multiple fronts, including the fronts around Pokrovsk, Chasiv Yar, and also Seversk, have been thwarted today by Ukrainian defensive actions, which have successfully been able to stop any further Russian advances in any kind of large figures. We will be waiting to see how that actually turns out, but we got loads of other news from multiple different directions today all across Ukraine. There is an absolutely insane amount of news that has come out from just the past 24 hours alone. And hopefully everyone is here so that way they can hear it, because right now it does look like the lag has ended up blasting the channel. It looks as though a lot of people were having a large issue with the lag. Terribly sorry about that once again, but hopefully it is all past now and we will be able to get right on into the stream. So moving on from also, by the way, in case you all don't know, just to give you all a little bit of an update, there is a hurricane that is currently barreling right towards Enforcer HQ right now in Birmingham, Alabama. So that may end up actually having some reason or some effect on our internet connectivity. Just letting y'all know that it may not be a DDoS attack. It may not even be YouTube service. It may literally be an act of God that is stopping us from running this show in the form of a hurricane that's going to be passing over us here, I think, very soon, within the next 24 to 48 hours. It's a Category 4, and by the time it passes over Birmingham, it'll be a Category 1, but there will still be expected gusts of around 70 to 110 mile per hour winds right where we are right now. So that may be...
Man, Enforcer HQ is getting hit by everything these days. The DDoS, it's getting hit with the hurricanes, the tornadoes, it's getting hit with pretty much everything at this point, but nothing's stopping us at this point.
Nothing will stop the Enforcer channel, much like nothing has ever stopped the Lee Spring Army, because nothing, literally nothing, can stop this show and this community from gathering together and doing this every single night. Of course, if our internet's knocked out and our power's knocked out, that might be a little bit of a different story. But for the large part, nothing will stop this stream. But moving on from that and into our major news today, we were able to hear that the Polish president, Andrzej Duda, did say that Poland is seriously considering military intervention inside of Ukraine. This is the direct report that we got from Noel Reports. Polish President Andrzej Duda stated that immediate intervention would be necessary if Russia attacks Ukrainian nuclear power plants. He highlighted the risk of potential strikes on the Rivne or Khmelnytsky nuclear plants, which are in separate areas of Ukraine. But nevertheless, President Duda has made it incredibly clear that the Polish will militarily respond, hell nor high water, if anything happens because of a direct Russian strike onto a Ukrainian nuclear power plant. That statement has been made clear today, and it's also starting to largely disseminate a larger amount of information that we may not know here in the public. One thing that we can get out of this is that apparently the information or the intelligence that the Ukrainians have about these possible strikes is highly credible, as we are now seeing that international members or partners such as Poland are starting to seriously weigh this into their own hypotheticals and decision-making processes for the future, and to see what the Polish may or may not do in those kinds of situations. Another interesting thing that we can get out of this with the Polish president Andrzej Duda is that there is a very interesting kind of a deal where Poland is once again trying to set itself forward to be the primary defender of the Ukrainian nation from any kind of a nuclear, biological, or chemical attack by the Russian Federation. We have heard such pledges from the French Republic in the past. We've also heard such pledges from the United States of America in the past as far as nuclear, biological, and chemical, but the Polish are once again reinvigorating and renewing their pledge that they will be there in Ukraine defending the nation of Ukraine from the Russian Federation if such a nuclear strike, in a sense, was to ever occur inside the country. There's a lot to consider with a kind of hypothetical like this, and I'm sure that the Polish and many NATO advisors are trying to figure out exactly what would happen if such a thing was to occur, but we have a pretty good idea of what it would look like. Most of these power plants are well within Ukrainian control, meaning that if they were hit, the damage would largely be mitigated almost off the bat. To give you all a hypothetical scenario, and we'll actually go down to one of the power plants, which is right down here in southern Ukraine, and it should be, let's see here, we follow the Mykolaiv, or the Ba River, we go up here to Voznesensk, it should be somewhere within this area, and I believe it's actually just a little bit more north than this. And here we go. This is the South Ukraine nuclear power plant. This is one of the nuclear power plants that's inside of Ukraine. Interestingly enough, Ukraine has more nuclear power plants than really most other countries in the world for the large part. It's actually one of the biggest in terms of the overall volume of nuclear reactors. But nevertheless, this is a hypothetical scenario for a nuclear power plant that would be hit. The Russians would slam a missile down into one of the reactor halls. We can actually see that this one apparently has possibly three some form of an RBMK reactor or some sort of a similar design of a reactor here at these reactor halls. Let's say that reactor number 3 out here on the right was the one to be hit. The Ukrainians would immediately take the other two offline, shutting down the entirety of the plant, and we will probably see that mitigating actions would be taken immediately for the Ukrainians to try and deal with the now, of course, ongoing meltdown because of the direct strike onto the reactor. The Ukrainians would probably have to start mobilizing a large amount of the Ukrainian armed forces to serve as the liquidators at this area, a lot like what happened in Chernobyl. They would have to try and clean up the radioactive debris and also find a way to stop further radioactive contamination from exiting the reactor hall and going into the atmosphere and then spreading out throughout the rest of Europe. In this hypothetical scenario, we are going to be expecting that the only member to join in support of Ukraine would be the Republic of Poland. Now, if the Republic of Poland was to join the Ukrainians in their defensive effort, this means that there will be a large amount of Polish armed forces that will be moving to the front lines in Ukraine, but we probably won't see a lot of them lingering around to try and deal with the liquidation of that nuclear power plant in this hypothetical scenario. They most likely would allow the Ukrainians the leeway to use their own citizenry to deal with the nuclear meltdown and to try and liquidate as much of it as possible and to try and clean up the area as best as they physically can. Of course, with heavy limitations involved, considering that there would still be massive manpower strains required by active frontline fighting. But nevertheless, it does seem as though this would be the most likely scenario that we would see if a nuclear meltdown was to occur inside of Ukraine, and it is leading a lot of people to wonder, is this really a smart move by the Polish? The Polish are a nation that we absolutely love on this channel because we run a lot of polls, and everyone knows that. Hey, let's get it, baby! But another thing that is really interesting about the Polish is that their armed forces are actually some of the largest in Europe, and it largely is the bulwark of the entirety of the NATO alliance and may as well be considered NATO's representative of our eastern bulwark in this area. A lot of people are wondering whether this would be a good move for Poland to intervene and get involved if this strike is imminent and it does happen on some nuclear power plant side of Ukraine. What should the Polish do? Should they get involved? Should they not get involved? Or maybe they should do something in between, almost a hybrid of being involved but not being involved at the same time. And a lot of people are throwing in their inputs and their opinions on this, and it seems like a lot of people are actually thinking that the Polish should get involved and should intervene. But Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so on this poll, just to recap the question one more time, it says Poland says they would intervene immediately if Russia targeted a nuclear power plant inside of Ukraine. And what are your thoughts? I put thought. So what's your thought? 65% said Poland should intervene if that does happen, while 27% said NATO should actually intervene, not just Poland, but the NATO alliance as a whole. And 4% said Poland should not intervene at all if Russia were to target a nuclear power plant. And on this one, I gotta say, I gotta give it to Poland. They are willing once again to step up and help Ukraine if Russia crossed this line, and this would be crossing quite a line. In my opinion, this would be the same as nuking Ukraine. If they were to hit the power plant, that would cause as much destruction as if Ukraine was nuked with an actual nuclear weapon. So that would be very, very serious, and Russia would be crossing pretty much the ultimate red line by doing that, and it sounds like China is providing imagery to Russia to help them target these plants if they chose to do so. So it's getting quite serious, and Zelenskyy is telling the U.S., y'all need to be on the ready for this because it looks like it's going to happen, and now it looks like Poland and other countries are taking this very seriously. So I think that Poland should intervene, and honestly, I really think I'm on the fence about NATO intervening in this, because if NATO is going to intervene, this would be the moment to do it. If they were to specifically target a nuclear power plant, then I think NATO might need to step in, because what are we going to step in for if it's not that? So I'm actually with the 65%, but I'm kind of in between the 26% as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say that not only should Poland intervene in that sort of an instance, I would believe that NATO should intervene as an entire alliance instead of a nation-to-nation basis. This would be a very serious instance. This would almost be a nuclear, well, this would be a nuclear attack on Ukraine in a more creative form. The reason why I would say that it is certainly a nuclear attack is because while Russian conventional weaponry would be used to conduct this attack, the resulting damage would be radiological in its nature. The radioactive, well, not really the radioactive, the reactor hull that houses the actual nuclear reactor would be breached. And considering that the containment vessel and the boiling vessel of this reactor would also have been ruptured, we would have to assume quite naturally that this thing would pretty much be going into a runaway meltdown almost instantaneously, really within minutes of the strike. That means that a major amount of radioactivity would be emitted from that reactor and into the atmosphere in the form, most likely, of some form of radioactive fallout from the reactor, and would be spread by the jet stream throughout a large area of Europe, maybe even including Russia as well, but most likely including the Western European nations that are mostly all members of NATO. This is actually worse, in a sense, than a nuclear weapon, because nuclear weapons, interestingly enough, a lot of people always talk about how nuclear weapons are wildly destructive, and usually the radioactive fallout is something to be scared of. But interestingly enough, the half-life of the radioactive isotopes in a nuclear bomb is actually very short. It usually only lasts about 2 weeks. So if you're able to survive 2 weeks after a nuclear bomb explodes, pretty much everything is free of radiation from that point forward. However, with a nuclear reactor, the half-life is still around 2 weeks. Well, actually, it's a little bit longer than that, I think. But it's constantly emitting an endless stream of radiation. It's like a nuclear bomb going off every single second and then emitting that amount of radiation into the atmosphere to then be carried along by the dust particles in that fallout and into the rest of Europe or wherever that may go. It is a massive risk and a massive threat that could be brought forward by such an attack. It's worse, honestly, than a conventional nuclear attack, at least in the terms of long-lasting ecological, economic, and population damage that it can cause here in the West. So going off of that, I would have to say that not only should Poland intervene, I would have to say that everyone should intervene. NATO as a whole should intervene. This is a situation that not only would affect Poland if a reactor was to be hit and went into a meltdown, this would affect the entirety of Europe. This would affect the United Kingdom, the Germans, the Danes, the Swedes, the Norwegians. It would affect literally everyone. That radioactive fallout would even somewhat deposit, probably here on the U.S. East Coast, because back in the day, when Chernobyl was a major issue, the radioactive fallout actually traveled north, from just north of Kyiv, through Belarus, through the Baltics, into Scandinavia, and then it actually flowed back down and then over the United Kingdom, and some very trace amounts of radiation were actually measured within the northeastern United States as we are going through another serious bout of lag. So let me wait for that to pass. Can you hear me, Matthew?
And we are back. It's doing it once again, man. Once we come back, it always goes away, like we're clear now.
Man, I'm telling you what, this is going to be a tough night right here. But beyond that, it is something that I would have to say I believe all of NATO should intervene on, because it will be affecting the entirety of the alliance, not just an individual nation. And not only that, this may as well be Russia conducting nuclear warfare in a much more creative form. And so with that, I hope
also, by the way, real quick, I saw some people in the live chat saying that Poland can't act independently of NATO without the entirety of NATO getting involved. And to my knowledge, if Poland decides to act independently, independently, then a NATO response is not required if Poland decides to get involved in this conflict voluntarily. Poland could go into Ukraine, in theory, and go do what they need to do, and then if Poland was fired upon, I think they could hypothetically still call an Article 4 convention, and they could vote on an Article 5 response, but in reality, it probably would not go through because Poland would then be a voluntary participant in the war, and that would be something they took on their own. So Poland is sort of like taking a bit of a gamble here because they could go out on their own and be left high and dry if NATO decides not to back them up if they voluntarily get involved. So I got to give Poland their props on this one because Poland is taking a very aggressive approach to dealing with the Russian threat, and they're actually quite a standout from the rest of NATO because NATO as a whole right now is being very pacifist about the whole situation with Russia and any provocations they make. But Poland consistently comes back sort of along the French lines as well. France and Poland kind of are very aggressive on the issue right now, and I got to give them their credit because nobody else is really stepping up right now, so they're pretty good on that front.
I would have to agree. And also, to answer the Polish question, the Polish can get involved offensively inside of Ukraine, and there really is nothing that NATO can do about that, and to be entirely honest. Now, there are some diplomatic connections outside of NATO that have been made largely by the United States that could sway their decision-making. The United States supplies and arms the Polish with a large amount of equipment that the Poles purchase from us, and because of that, we largely control their supply of repair parts that would be needed to keep most of that running. So we can just tell them, you're not going to do that, or else we're not going to keep sending you arms and supplies to be able to keep your armed forces running, even if you have the money to buy it. And the Polish will go, that's a pretty big deal, we're probably not going to get involved. But the United States didn't do that. Poland actually could act offensively. You see, NATO is a collective security organization, or what is kind of in more abstract terms, simplified, a defensive pact. That means that it only pertains to defensive situations if someone was attacked. That is what NATO directly pertains to and the actual confines of the charter. So, if Poland was to say, I do not like the Turks, and let's just say Turkey's not in NATO, I want to obliterate the Turks. I'm going to go and I'm going to bomb the Turks. The Polish could do that entirely on their own, and NATO really has no real say unless if America wanted to use its diplomatic connections by supplying them with arms to be able to stop them from doing that, because NATO is not a military alliance in the full sense that it's offensive and defensive. NATO is entirely structured as a defensive alliance, meaning that any member of NATO could go off and go gallivanting into the sunset and do whatever the hell they want offensively, but it doesn't pertain to anything defensive. And I'll actually give y'all, well, actually it doesn't pertain to anything offensive at all, but I'll give y'all a couple of examples of times that NATO countries have conducted defensive actions and nothing has been done. The British, when dealing with the Malayan emergency, which is what they called the war in Malaya, they called it an emergency for insurance purposes, in case y'all are wondering why in the world was it called an emergency and not a war, but that was back in the 50s. The United Kingdom was a NATO member in the 50s. They got involved out there, did not require any NATO involvement at all. A better one is probably the Suez Crisis, back when Israel conducted a war against Egypt with the backing and support of the United Kingdom and France militarily, and ended up capturing the entirety of the Sinai Peninsula as well as the Suez Canal back in I believe it was 53. President Eisenhower here in the United States actually forced the cessation of the Suez Canal and the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt because he stated that it was a violation of international law and UN resolution. The United Kingdom and France both operated independently outside of NATO to be able to conduct this offensive action, and they didn't have to pass it by anyone. The only problem was that it didn't fall within international law, according to the United States, the leader of NATO, but beyond that, they didn't have to ask for approval to conduct those offensive actions. Better yet, another great example of an offensive action that has, well, several offensive actions that have actually been conducted are by the French in Africa. Back when the NATO Charter was made and France was initially in Africa, they had a massive amount of colonies. France really actually controlled about the entire this entire area of West Africa. Almost all of this was French controlled, and the war in Algeria was an incredibly brutal and bloody one, and actually defined a lot of modern French politics as it exists today. But one thing that's interesting to come out of that is that once again, France was conducting largely offensive action, if you want to call it that, against the uprisings inside the French colonies, and once again did not have to ask for any kind of authorization from other NATO members to act offensively in that situation. Now it's time to move on to the biggest member of offensive actions without asking for authorization from anyone, Turkey. Turkey has conducted probably the most amounts of offensive actions while being in the NATO alliance without asking for approval from anyone. Turkey invaded Cyprus. Many of y'all will look at Cyprus and y'all will realize Cyprus is not a whole country. Cyprus is only this western half. This area over here is actually a puppet state that was created by a Turkish invasion. And then this little dotted line in between them is actually an area that is managed and controlled by the United Nations. And then this little area right down here, I believe, is Dekilia and Akatori, which are a British air base based on the island of Cyprus. But beyond that, Turkey did invade Cyprus without any request for permission from the United Nations. Once again, an offensive action, and the Turks did not ask for approval from anyone. The Turks also have done a great deal of many other offensive actions. They obliterate Kurds on a daily basis within southeastern Turkey. They have done this without asking for NATO approval the entire time, and they're also armed and supplied largely by Western nations as a whole for their armed forces. Another thing that Turkey has done is that they went and deliberately went to war with Bashar al-Assad inside of Syria and invaded an area along the border of Turkey, and they also went to war with the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are backed and supported by the United States of America. And they went to war fighting both of them and ended up taking over a pretty large swath, several dozen miles deep, along the northern Syrian border. They did this without asking approval from anyone, and it was actually a massive shock to the United States that they offensively acted against the Syrian Democratic Forces within northern Syria, beyond the area, I believe, of the Tigris River. It's actually the Euphrates. But beyond that, time and time again, history has shown that offensive actions by NATO members taken as an individual country never requires NATO approval at any single point. Defensive actions, on the other hand, is a NATO-wide action, and it has to be put up to a vote. But still, a country can operate independently from the alliance every single step of the way if they have the means to. And most countries, like Poland, largely have the means to, if no one tries to pull any other diplomatic strings behind the scenes to make that the case otherwise. So going off of that, Poland can completely get involved inside of Ukraine if they wanted to at literally any point. That would make them an active belligerent of the war, and the Russians would probably end up attacking them, but then that wouldn't be a invocation of Article 5 immediately. Then there would probably be a debate and a question inside of NATO as to whether Poland is owed any kind of Article 5 protections at that point, because they actively went out of their way to become an active belligerent and then become a target as a nation. So that's most
I
likely.
personally think that if that situation were to happen, I have a feeling that NATO probably would reject Poland's request for Article 5 protection at that point. And to be perfectly honest with you, while I would grant Poland, if I was in charge, it's just me, by the way, my personal opinion, I would grant Poland the Article 5 protection if they wanted it, even if they actively, voluntarily got involved in the war. I would personally grant it. But I think with NATO being the way they currently are and approaching things sort of in a passive way, I think they would probably deny Poland that protection if that were to occur in that way.
They may possibly so. They probably would, in all honesty, because they would be saying that the Polish went out of their way to become an active belligerent, and our defense only pertains to a complete innocence, where it couldn't be stated that you kind of brought it upon yourself by getting involved in something. That may be the case, the kind of argument that would be brought up to make sure that the rest of NATO didn't have to get involved in Poland's defense, but we would largely have to wait and see what the actual statements would be around that time that something like that would happen. So going off of that, that is largely our groundwork here that we're working off of, and Poland could clearly get involved. But I still think that NATO, in the event of a nuclear attack on Ukraine, should get involved as an entire alliance. There should be no piecemealing of Poland gets involved, maybe the Baltics, and then some other people. It ought to be the entire alliance stepping forward, because it will affect the entire alliance at a single moment. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And also I see someone saying NATO is pretty much useless now. NATO is not useless. NATO is the strongest military alliance to ever exist in the history of this world. Literally, it has been beaten by none. It has more firepower than the allies of World War II. It has more active service members within the NATO alliance than any other alliance the world over. The NATO alliance is an incredibly strong one at its base as an actual apparatus. The issue is that the commanding leadership of NATO is largely inactive or is very slow to respond or wildly cautious to the point of a cowardice for the large part. That's really the best way to explain it. NATO is a wildly useful organization, unlike the United Nations, which is completely useless on an actual administrative level and a leadership level. That one's completely pointless. But NATO is a very useful organization. It is a tool for the entire Western world collectively. The problem is that people don't really view it like that, and a lot of people always operate NATO from a position of weakness here in the modern day, and that makes it seem as though NATO is useless. Although in reality, if it was used in a different way, NATO would probably be the fear of most people around the world. If anyone heard that NATO was coming their way, they would probably be running for the hills because they would be scared of what would be coming from the complete devastation and destruction that NATO armed forces would bring against anyone's conventional armed forces. And that's kind of how it works. A lot of people misconstrue the uselessness of an organization because of ineffective leadership with its actual effectiveness as a design of an organization. And that's a whole argument in its own that we could go in a rabbit hole on, because I see a lot of people throwing in their opinions, but NATO is a wildly useful organization. I can't ever argue against that. It really just is. The United Nations, though, is one of the most useless and most incompetent organizations that ever existed, not because of its leadership. The leadership actually tries in NATO, but the way the UN is structured makes it completely useless from the start. That's really like the best way I can explain it. We could go into a whole rabbit hole later to explain that, but for now, just take that at face value. In my opinion, NATO is a very useful organization. The United Nations is pointless. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Polish statements, and we're now going to be moving on into something else a little bit interesting, since we're kind of on this topic about what the Western world and NATO is going to be doing. Ukraine has sent forward its victory plan to the United States of America, and it seems as though the United States government has not really been that adamant about this victory plan. They have said that it may be a little bit questionable. But Zelensky's victory plan was presented in Washington, including Article 5 protection for Ukraine under the UN Charter. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts about this and what they're thinking about it. And a lot of people seem to be thinking that this is going to be shot down instantly and really has no hope of surviving till tomorrow. Some other people are saying that that's kind of viable and likely to happen. Some are saying, how is that a victory plan at all? And others are a little bit unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so after we heard a couple of months ago, basically the U.S. came out and said, I don't think Ukraine's ever really going to be truly in NATO, but we'll give them NATO-like protections after they win the war. So that kind of blew the hopes of really Ukraine joining NATO right now, or at least when the war's over, at least temporarily. So right now we're seeing Zelenskyy approach it a different way, and he included in his victory plan, which was presented about a couple of days ago, he said that he wants Article 5-like protection for Ukraine as part of that victory plan. So about 38% of the audience said that will never happen for Ukraine, and 28% said that's viable and very likely to happen, and 15% said, how's that really even part of a victory plan? And on this one, I gotta admit, I gotta give Zelenskyy credit for trying this, because he's trying to get the best protection for his country, but I'm really not sure how that fits into a victory plan per se, because the whole plan that Washington had requested was how Ukraine plans to win the war on the ground. And of course, many things are classified, they're not going to be told out in the public, because that would be an OPSEC violation, but it sounds like most of the provisions in the victory plan were actually requesting things from the United States, for example, more money, more weapons, and also Article 5 protection. And in my opinion, that's really not a victory plan. I do agree that Zelenskyy does need those things, but right now we need more concrete evidence of how Ukraine plans to strategize to win the war on the ground. And right now, the U.S. is a little bit unhappy with the current victory plan. So on the topic of the Article 5 protection, I would say that will probably be a very, very tough thing, because considering the fact that the U.S. just ruled out NATO membership for Ukraine, or pretty much alluded to the fact it's going to be very difficult to obtain for Zelenskyy, I think that this Article 5 protection will probably be denied. That's my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, the chances of this going forward at all in any good way is probably very slim. The peace plan was not really a peace plan, like to say per se. It was more so, like Matthew was saying, more rockets, more bombs, and then some protections. And the problem is that Ukraine will not be getting into NATO anytime soon. An independent commission made by NATO said that the Ukrainian armed forces was still so corrupt that if they were brought into NATO, that corruption would probably start to permeate throughout the rest of the alliance. The thing with NATO, and the thing with a lot of Western organizations, is that we actually run them to a pretty high T. And a lot of people look at that here in the West and they go, that's crazy. Like, almost everything's incompetent. And well, relatively, a lot of people would think it is incompetent, but when you look at other countries like Russia and China, and you see the kind of bureaucracies that they have and how their armed forces run, you find out that really everything in the West is run incredibly well, relatively compared to everyone else. Going off of that, it would be really hard to get Ukraine in soon, because it sounds as though from the NATO Independent Commission that was made about a year back, they still have a long ways to go to bring themselves up to a NATO standard to be brought into NATO. And according to that NATO commission, that could take years. So that's not going to be happening anytime soon. That means that at a minimum, for them to be able to join NATO and then get Article 5 protections, which is the only way they can get Article 5 protections is by joining NATO, they would have to go through multiple more years of war to even get to that point. Or they would have to end the war and then wait multiple years and then eventually get into NATO. One way or the other, that's going to be a pretty long time, and maybe not that amenable for Ukraine. The other thing is that asking for more support in the form of, weaponry for the large part, that doesn't really sound like a plan for victory, because, once again, I got to lay this out. That is getting to victory, but that's not victory. There's kind of a difference here. Talking in World War II about a victory plan would be talking about what's going to happen to Germany at the end of the war. Once the war is over, what are we doing with Germany? That is a victory plan. The victory plan does not involve how do we get to victory. That's already assumed in the victory plan of what will be happening at that point. So asking for more weaponry in a victory plan makes that certainly not sound like a victory plan. That makes it sound like we're working towards victory, which is not, in a sense, a victory plan. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, that sounds kind of like word soup in a word game, but let me try and make it a little bit more sensible. Winning a war has a war plan, and that's kind of what we're looking at right now, is the continuation of war planning. A victory plan is when the war has been won and it's over, and then what do you do at that point? So then you talk about rebuilding, restructuring, economic incentives, benefits, things like that, humanitarian aid, humanitarian assistance, all those sorts of things. That is largely what's involved in a victory plan. And once again, to remind everyone about the victory plan we had here in the West for Germany, Germany would be cut up into 4 pieces: a British, French, American, and Soviet occupation zone. Berlin would also be divided up into 4 occupation zones. We would then try and figure out collectively amongst the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, and the United States how to reintegrate the German populace, denazify Germany, and also rebuild the commercial infrastructure and industrial infrastructure that existed pre-war before the devastation wrecked the entirety of Germany. That was a victory plan. And of course, that victory plan fell apart because Germany formed into East Germany and West Germany, because the Soviets in the West would not cooperate on creating a unified Germany immediately. That came at the fall of the Soviet Union and around 1989. But nevertheless, there was a plan for what was going to happen when the last shot was fired. But once again, that's the plan for when the last shot's fired. That's not talking about getting more bombs and rockets. That's not a victory plan. That's a war plan. And those are 2 entirely different things. So I can see why they're not really that happy with it, because, once again, why in the world would Ukraine be stockpiling more rockets and bombs if the war at that point would be over according to a victory plan? So it doesn't seem as though that will be going too well. It's probably going to get shot down pretty quickly, at least in my opinion, because that's not a victory plan. That's a war plan. Entirely different thing. You got to submit.
I will say, though, I will say that Ukraine does have a very uphill battle with this whole situation, because while I do agree, this isn't necessarily a victory plan from what I've heard based on what Zelenskyy presented in Washington, but also at the same time, if he presented the plan, like for example, if he said, we're going to continue our excursion into mainland Russia, keep going into Kursk, and keep plowing through mainland Russia to grab more land for a land-for-land exchange in the future, that would also be met with some very cold shoulders in Washington as well at this point, because they're not wild about escalating things. So Zelenskyy does have it tough right now. He has to sort of like walk the line between not escalating too much, which is really honestly needed right now to win the war, and also not de-escalating so much that he loses the war and starts losing ground. So I'm not really sure where the U.S. officials really want Zelenskyy to fall right now. I do understand the fact that the victory plan isn't very precise right now, and it does need to be more precise, but I'm not really sure what they're looking for from Zelenskyy at the moment in an actual victory plan.
I would tell you largely what they would be looking for. So I'll just say this. Let's say in this hypothetical victory plan that I'm going to lay out, Ukraine has been able to regain all of their territory. There will be administration set up in the occupied areas of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea for several years, meaning that they will have to reintegrate the civilian population within these areas. And unlike the rest of Ukraine, these areas would remain, and of course the stream goes out right when I start going into this explanation. Wonderful stuff. So hopefully we're back.
We're good now. We're
All
good.
right. But the remainder of these areas that were formerly occupied by the Russians would be retained in a state of martial law until a certain kind of assuredness could be made that there will be no more Russian uprisings within these areas, or that there will not be any form of proxy forces conducting a guerrilla war against the Ukrainian government. That would be one part of a victory plan. The next part of a victory plan would be rebuilding the nation from the devastation of conflict. Such cities like Mariupol, Vovchansk, Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar, Pokrovsk, Avdiivka, Donetsk, Orlivka, Makivka down here, many cities would have to be pretty much rebuilt from the ground up, and that would be at an incredibly great expense. And the Ukrainians would have to be able to lay out a proper economic plan and the proper economic idea and model for rebuilding these cities and repopulating these areas post-war. That's usually an incredibly more problematic situation than you would think, because if we go over here to London, I will show you all what their victory plan looked like, is large greens and unpopulated areas within South London. Now, a lot of people would be thinking, well, that just kind of looks like a lot of parks, right? Well, one thing y'all may not know is that the British government in World War II made a bit of a strategic decision that they would pretty much guide German bombers to bomb South London instead of North London. That was done through a whole bunch of deception and all sorts of rigmarole. We could get into that a while later. But nevertheless, it largely spared Northern London from a larger amount of the bombings throughout most of the war, but Southern London was racked with bombings. Most of the area was leveled. And so post-war, they had to rebuild this area, and it wasn't really done that well. There are just completely empty and void areas in South London where buildings once stood, they were bombed, and they were never rebuilt again. And so you can largely see that rebuilding post-war can end up being a bit of a difficult thing. One of the few countries that was successfully done in was West Germany after World War II, and that's largely because there was an endless amount of money that we were funneling into West Germany to make it more successful and prosperous than East Germany, to make the point that capitalism wins out over communism. That was kind of like the overall theme there, but still, nevertheless, Germany did rebuild a lot better after World War II than, say, the United Kingdom and some of the cities that suffered from the Blitz, or some of the French cities that still lay in ruins to this day, although those are mostly towns. But beyond that, that's usually a very intricate process, and that's a big part of victory planning. Another thing that they would have to do is that they would have to lay out a comprehensible roadmap on how they're going to tackle corruption and bring their armed forces up to a NATO standard to be able to be brought into NATO. That's a pretty difficult one to deal with as well, and they would also have to lay out a anti-corruption campaign to try and figure out how they're going to be dealing with the corruption in the Ukrainian judiciary, the Ukrainian legislative, and the Ukrainian executive branches inside of their government. All of these things would have to be a part of a victory plan. And right now, Ukraine didn't really lay that out in a victory plan. What they did is that they laid out another war plan. They said, we need more rockets, we need more bombs, and we want to be in NATO. And that's really just continuing on the war. That's not really talking about what happens when it's over. So that's why America wasn't really that happy with it, because it doesn't at all explain what they would do when they win. It just kind of explains what they want to keep on fighting so that way they can eventually win. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from how I'm understanding it. And with that, I see someone said, why did y'all go to law school and not become history majors? Oh, I'm a history major. I actually am. I have a bachelor's in history. So,
and I'm a poli-sci grad.
Yeah, so we have knowledge in this. We have knowledge. But beyond that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from the victory plan side of things and down on into Israel, as we do have a good bit of news down there. Well, actually, more so a summary or a recap. Well, not really a recap. It's breaking news, but it's kind of a small summary. But still, nevertheless, Matthew, what do we got in terms of the questions? But before we get into that, I just saw someone say, Matt, let your brother finish before speaking his thoughts. Who the hell are you? Like, I've had no problem with it. Listen, if I have a problem with it, I'll stand up for myself. He's not interrupting me at all on top of that, and I don't even know why in the world you would interject yourself in something like that. That's goofy. But anyways, Matthew, what do you got?
It's a bot, man. They occasionally hop in here and they'll say something like either on your side or my side or something. They'll be like, Matt, I wouldn't let him talk to you like that or something like that. Or they'll hop in and say, Enforcer, Matt's interrupting you. It's just someone trying to come in and it's like sow a division. It's like we weren't born yesterday. It's like we can see what's going on with that. Like the hot dog people did that, and also the bots like to do that as well. It's like also we're dealing with a delay here. So if we interrupt each other, like we understand why. There's a massive delay. But anyways, jumping on into our first super chat segment of the night. We have some very generous support tonight. And our first one is from Charles Hazlitt, a longtime channel legend who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Charles, for that support. He said, thank you both for the coverage, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the massive support, Charles Hazlitt, and helping this channel to keep on running tonight. And thank you so much for enjoying our news coverage. We put a lot into this every single day to make sure that this ends up being a well-polished news stream. Sadly, the lag is ending up kind of affecting that tonight, but I still hope folks are enjoying it nonetheless. And I got to thank you so much once again for always enjoying this channel and supporting it and helping it to keep on running, Charles, because you're one of the folks who makes this thing possible day in and day out. But Matthew, let's grab that live chat in the honor of Charles Hazlitt.
All right, so this live chat question here in honor of Charles goes to Just Sackett, who says, have you heard that Russia plans to sell supersonic missiles to the Houthis with Iran as the middleman?
I have not heard that at the moment. I would be largely doubting that, as the hypersonic technology that the Russians are using is considered largely a strategic imperative and a state secret of the Russian Federation. Allowing that kind of weaponry to get into the hands of a loosely organized group within Western Yemen that might end up selling off that technology or information for a quick buck to help further support their armed efforts would probably be a pretty bad idea. So while I haven't heard about that, I would largely have to assume that is most likely untrue, because such modern technology and weaponry is never handed out like party favors by the country that just made it. Much like the American F-35 is not being handed out to anyone that has the money. Turkey, which was a big part financially of helping to develop the F-35 program, it was a multinational effort, ended up being cut out from any F-35 orders because their loyalty to the West is very questionable at the moment, and we don't want that kind of technology getting into their hands, or it could end up getting into someone else's hands and making us lose their strategic edge. The same thing largely applies for the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. So someone say it's not really even hypersonic. That's true. It's not really hypersonic. It only reaches a semi-hypersonic speed at pretty much the peak of its flight. But beyond that, it still kind of is, and the Russians would consider that mostly a state secret, one not to share with other people at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. Huge thanks to you once again, Charles Hazlitt, for supporting this channel and helping it keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Lord Lathos LSAs, also a longtime channel legend who puts in a $21 donation, and huge shout out to you, Lord Lathos, for that support once again. And they said, hopefully, Putin is removed, and I agree with that. And also, and before the U.S. elections, and what say you, enforcers, and please take a live chat.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Lord Lathos LSA, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you with LSA in their names who make sure to keep the LSA alive and running each and every day. And I gotta thank you massively for that. To answer your question, hopefully Putin would be removed. Well, he's certainly not going to be removed before the U.S. election. I don't really think it matters that much, and I've been seeing some interesting things going on recently with this whole deal. I gotta be honest with y'all. I'm not really happy with it. I'll put in my input here in a second about that. But beyond that, he will not be getting out before then, because there's only about 2 months, and even if public faith in Putin is beginning to wane, much like we saw with Solovyev's crazy statement yesterday, it will take a lot longer for that to actually take hold and really get Putin out of office. So that will be a bit of an issue. But as far as the whole U.S. election side of things, I don't know about y'all. I'm going to put my input in on this, but Zelenskyy visited the United States very recently, and with his visit, he ended up making some interesting kinds of statements that I just necessarily can't agree with. And I'll tell you all why, and it's not really just about this one specific instance, it's about a lot of them, and I really get tired of seeing this over and over and over. For some reason in America, we absolutely hate to have foreign leaders come over and tell us who we ought to vote for. But then each side cherry picks the people from overseas that they want to support them in the upcoming election, which I largely consider that, when a foreign leader weighs in on a U.S. election and who people ought to vote for, to be foreign interference, whether it be a friendly nation or a enemy nation. I largely consider that to be interference. Putin has come out and made a statement today, well, not a statement today, it was about last week or two, endorsing a certain candidate, and I find that to be election interference. Luckily, everyone just kind of threw that one to the side. But then Viktor Orban also made a statement on who he'd want for president in the United States, and then the specific political party that was directed at said, we hate foreign interference, but we'll take that one. And then Zelenskyy comes over recently, and he starts making certain wordage, saying that he's largely supporting a certain group here in America, and everyone goes, we are against foreign interference, except for this guy, because he's supporting us. I don't like that. You see, because everyone in the world bitches about how people shouldn't be involved in their elections and telling them who to vote for and trying to sway people. And I'm largely for that. I don't think the American government should ever get involved in telling the Germans who their chancellor should be. I don't think we should be getting involved in who Britain's prime minister should be or who their members of parliaments are. I don't believe that we should be telling the French who they should be voting for president. That's not the United States position. Our position is our government. Who is going to be voted in and who's not going to be. And people who come from overseas, whether they be allies or enemies, should be told to shut their mouths on U.S. elections and not say a thing. That's absolutely ridiculous to me that we continue to allow this, and everyone keeps on deriding foreign involvement in our elections until they support their side, and then they let that slide. That's a major problem in this country that I'm seeing these days, and I did not like at all the kind of statements that Zelenskyy was making while he was here in the United States very recently. They were very political in their statements, and I find that to be a complete violation of foreign interference in American elections, just like Viktor Orban when he did that about a month or two ago with a different presidential candidate. That is absolutely ridiculous that that's happening and that people just keep on turning a blind eye as long as it's helping them out. That is stupid. I would say, in my opinion, Orban ought to shut his mouth, and Zelenskyy ought to shut his mouth. They have absolutely no right, American citizens, who in the world is the best candidate to vote for America. Because do we go over to Ukraine and do we tell them Zelensky's not a good option for them, vote for someone else? No, we don't. In fact, a lot of people keep on saying, don't get involved with that. Don't even tell them to hold an election. And so we don't tell them to hold an election, but then he can come over here and try and tell us who to vote for in this election, and Orban can too? These people need to, listen, I'm saying this in all respect, as much as I can. But Zelenskyy is a great leader for Ukraine in a wartime, but Zelenskyy coming over and Orban coming over and wanting to tell people who to vote for in the United States ought to get stuffed. This is the United States of America. Our citizens will decide who's the best for our country. Foreign leaders of other countries should not be coming over here to the United States of America, whether we like them or not, and telling people who and who not they should be voting for. That is a ridiculous idea. And I, for one, me personally, would condemn anyone on those individual statements. I would not condemn them on everything, but I would condemn the statements, as that is openly trying to interfere in an American election, which we largely do not do to our allies, and I don't believe that folks who say that they are allies of the United States should be doing that to us in return. I feel like that's a fairly common sense statement. And also, Matthew Ford said, who do they endorse? I can't get into that because that's a domestic political thing, but I did make sure to do it across the board because Orban endorsed one side and Zelensky's come over and he's largely endorsing the other. I don't like that at all. It's bad. It's a bad look. It's bad optics, and everyone keeps on going because this is what I've seen. This is legitimately what I've seen, and it churns me sick to my stomach. Let me, you know what, I'll put it out there a lot more clearly so that way y'all can get the idea that this is fair. So I'm going to use I'm going to use the names of the parties. I'm not going to get into the candidates, but I'll tell you all what I've been seeing on both sides. So we're going to start off with one. It's not because that one's the wrong one. It's just that I have to start off with one or the other, but I'll tell you all what I've seen. The Republicans go, oh, foreign interference in our elections is wrong. No one from a foreign country should be saying anything about our elections. But Orban endorsed our guy, so he's good. And then the Democrats go, oh, Orban shouldn't be coming over here and saying things about this upcoming election. That's foreign interference. But Zelenskyy kind of endorsed our side, so that's all good. We're going to let that one slide. That shouldn't be sliding at all. Why in the world is everyone not coming together and shooting this stuff down equally? Like we should. Like we should be saying these people have no right to be telling American citizens who and what they're supposed to be voting for. I don't care who y'all are voting for, but I will be damned if someone's going to come over here from a foreign country, a leader of a foreign nation, and start telling y'all who to vote for either way. That's ridiculous to me, and I don't stand for that one bit at all. Like I will die on that hill because that is a hill worth dying on. Everyone always talks about foreign interference here and there and everywhere from the Chinese and the Russians. And then we have supposedly our own allies, the Hungarians being a part of NATO and Ukraine saying that they're pro-Western, now coming over here and telling us who to vote for on either side. That's ridiculous to me. Absolutely insane. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I think we are on, well, actually, we're on to a live chat really quickly, but a big thanks to you once again for the support, Lord Lathos LSA, and I hope that kind of weighs in on what I have been seeing. Once again, I'm falling within, just in case anyone's wondering, I'm falling within the no politics rule here because I'm equally condemning both sides. Some people don't know that. The no politics rule is about picking a side and supporting it, or condemning another side unequally. I'm all for on this channel not talking about politics and picking a side. We like to be largely down the middle. Domestic political issues largely don't affect this channel or pose any kind of a major discussion point here. But one thing I will say is that when I see something stupid that both sides are doing, or something good that both sides are doing, I will bring that up and I will promote both of them or condemn both of them equally, because that's, once again, within the no politics rule, because I'm not actively picking a side in that event. But with that, let's get a live chat, Matthew. What do we got?
All right, so this live chat question goes to David Tablet, who says the radioactive cloud from the attacks on nuclear reactors inside of Ukraine would cover Europe, and could it constitute an attack on NATO and possibly trigger Article 5?
That is an interesting question. A nuclear fallout from a reactor being hit could possibly constitute Article 5, as that could be construed as conducting an attack against the West. That probably would be debated greatly, though, because there's a lot to be argued there. I mean, you know, the fallout source is in Ukraine. Is it really affecting them, or was it really supposed to affect us? Maybe it wasn't, and we're just getting the residuals from this. There could be a really big argument in that, but I have a feeling that the West would most likely lean towards, considering that that would be nuclear terrorism of a sort, that Russia meant to attack Ukraine and the West collectively by conducting that attack, and then they would end up taking action against Russia for that reason. So I do believe that in that one singular instance, Article 5 probably would be invoked, although there still would probably be a pretty decent debate surrounding that kind of a hypothetical. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and a big shout out once again to Lord Lathos LSA for supporting this channel with his incredible super chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to keep this channel running and help us to make this thing possible. And so with that, I see some people, I gotta bring this up again. So I've seen Matthew had to address it, so I'll bring it up again because I'm also seeing this a lot as well. Just because I bring up something that is in the realm of politics, but I make sure to address it fairly, that does not give folks an excuse in the live chat to start going ham with their own political opinions and saying, I like this side and I don't like the other. That violates the no politics rule. You either do not speak politics here, or you equally condemn or praise both sides at the same time. That's how the no politics rule works. Like, we do not make any exceptions for that. If you like a party and you want to vote for someone, that's absolutely incredible. And I highly encourage you to exercise your right to vote in this country. Democracy is a very important thing, and democracy only exists when citizens vote. But nevertheless, we do not tolerate that kind of political discussion here. There are many other channels that do, and there are many echo chambers on both sides that one can go to if you want to hear exactly your political opinions. This channel is not about that. This channel is not about delving into domestic political matters and telling y'all what's right and what's wrong in a domestic political sense. We are only here to tell y'all what's going on around the world, to support Western interests wherever they may lie, and that's it. And so for that reason, we're never going to get involved in any kind of domestic political topic, and we also ban that kind of discussion from the channel. So I hope that does address that best I can for folks who may be misunderstanding what my last statement was about. It's not supporting or condemning one side or the other. It's condemning both of them equally because they're doing the same thing. But with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving right back into the news that we have for tonight. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our last super chat of the segment is going to go to James Hughes, who's been on the channel for a very long time as well, and he puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, James, for that support as always. He said, how do you guys prepare for your show, and do you have a meeting before the show, etc.? And I'll say for my part, James, I typically will do my research beforehand, so that way if we bring up a topic, I'll have enough information in my head to be able to discuss it. Also, I will make my polls ahead of time and set up the entire layout, because I have to set up multiple windows on my computer to actually have things running properly. And that takes actually 10 minutes in itself. And then also I got to do the research ahead of time as well. And also I'm tweeting throughout the day. So we do pass each other before the show starts. We don't have a meeting per se. The enforcer does sit down quite some time ahead of the stream to prepare for it, because he's got the really heavy part of actually compiling the main news segment, and I have the operational part on my end that I tend to as well. So, Enforcer, tell about your part.
I would have to say that as far as what it goes for me, Matthew and me don't really cross paths much before the show, because we actually have like two entirely different work schedules that we're sort of following. Matthew is doing polls and also more so the function side of things. I'm more so on the form side of things. So a lot of what y'all are seeing on air on the show, like the map and the markers and the videos and also the commentary and stuff like that, that's all largely formulated by me and cooked up in my head before the show every single night. So every single time that y'all get on this show and y'all hear me talk, this is all stuff that I've tried to categorize in my head on like what order we're going to be going in and where and what I'm going to be saying about certain things. I had to think all of that up every single night fresh, like I'm talking right now. And Matthew is more so on the functioning side of things. So he does all the stuff that has to deal with the polls, also making sure that the chat runs properly, more so technical stuff. But with my thing, it does start off a lot earlier than Matthew's. I usually have to get to work on this thing about 3 hours before the show starts running to be able to get all the news together, to make a thumbnail, to come up with a title, and then also the descriptions come up last second. So if you see any typos in that, that's why. Is because I'm trying to make sure the description is as up to date as possible when we go live. And also, OBS doesn't have an autocorrect built in, so if I mistype something, I don't really see it. But still, that's kind of my side of things. So we don't really have like a powwow or a meeting. We kind of do, if you want to call anything a powwow or a meeting. We get into a Discord call about 10 minutes before the show goes live, and we end up making noises. Like, that's the best way I can explain it, is like I get into the call, and every single day I'll do this. Like, this sounds goofy, but this is what I do kind of to get ready. Oh, oh, what's up, man? Oh, hello there. And then I do something like that, and then I'll be like, man, tonight's going to be a big night, man. And I'll tell Matthew the title and show him the thumbnail, and kind of like give him the rundown of like the biggest things that we're going to be doing. And then usually we talk about yesterday's show and if people like something or if they didn't, and you know, whether to do that again or tonight or not. And then we go live, and then we also do that again at the end of the show. We kind of like hang out for like 10 or 20 minutes sometimes after the show and talk about some things that happened, whether they were good, whether they were not. Sometimes we end up talking about bots. Sometimes that's one of the more interesting conversations, is what the bots said, like some of the dumbest takes seen. And then we all go to sleep or we go do something else. But that's kind of how it works in the background every day with like the pre-show prep. And also, some people are like, Totoro. Yeah, that's what I say. I say Totoro. And Matthew actually spelled it in the chat properly. It's like Totoro. Yeah, so that's what I say every single day. I've said that thousands of times now, because I come on every single day and just go Totoro, Totoro, and then, you know, just do that. That's like the thing. And also Matthew does it as well. He usually does it a little different. Matthew, give them an example.
Actually, like these days, I hadn't done the Totoro thing in a long time. I usually like kind of go like semi-quiet before it starts to like mentally get myself ready for the chat onslaught that's about to happen when the stream actually starts. Because when it first starts, the like chats coming in are like I think 150 a minute or something like that. And I'm keeping up with every single one. I'm trying to respond to every single one of y'all that hop in here because I don't want to leave anybody hanging that comes in to say hello because I feel like y'all might think I'm trying to like slight you or something like that. So I try to like keep up with it all, and I'm trying to like get mentally prepared because these days I don't drink coffee before the stream. I had to stop doing that because it was messing me up when I was trying to go to sleep. And also, I don't think it agreed with my system after law school ended. So I had to stop doing that. So I like mentally get ready for the thing ahead of time. But the Enforcer does the Totoro whole thing before it starts.
Yeah, also some of y'all are probably wondering, am I like a big fan of like that thing from like Gimli Studios where that Totoro character was in it? I've never even watched that show. I just remember hearing the word Totoro and I was like, oh, that's a pretty funny word, like kind of cool to say. And it kind of gets me ready to like speak on the stream for some reason. So I go Totoro, Totoro, because sometimes y'all may not know this. I actually have a little tiny stammer, actually, like a tiny one. It kind of comes out sometimes when I'm not saying stuff on the show. And I ended up doing it the other day. Like I was out of the store and I was like, y'all have stuff back there? And I was like, why the hell can I not talk like in real life sometimes like I do on the show? I don't know why. Like that's just, it's actually started to get worse recently. I have no clue. Maybe it's like stress or something. I have no idea. But beyond that, that has been something I've been noticing, and I'm like, dang. So doing the whole but like for some reason it like works out my mouth and my tongue enough in the right way where I can get on the show and I can generally talk without too many stammers or stutters at all, really, or none. But generally, when I go into monologues, it's really easy for me not to stammer for some reason. But tiny little stammers will come out when I'm talking other times. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thank you so much once again for the support, James Hughes, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to get right back to the news. And moving on down and into northern Israel, we were able to see that the Israelis are getting ready for war. We have two different clips or two different segments of news. The Israeli Army Chief of Staff says that we are preparing for a ground maneuver inside of Lebanon, and we were also able to get an additional bit of news that is once again letting us know that the Israelis are going to be conducting ground action inside of Lebanon. Once again, from the same source, the IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Hersi Halevi, says that the military is preparing for a ground offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And according to a direct quote, Hezbollah today expanded its range of fire. Later today, it will receive a very strong response. He vows after the terror group fired a missile at Tel Aviv this morning. And that was the intermediate range ballistic missile we were talking about last night. So it does seem as though war is coming to this region, and we will probably be seeing that here within the next week or two. Maybe so, or maybe even a little bit later than that. But moving on out of that region, it's time for us to move on back up into Ukraine and back into Russia, actually, to Moscow, where we were able to hear that Putin started talking about hypotheticals today. I'm not going to play the clip because there's no subtitles and it's 4 minutes long, but Putin at the National Security Council on Nuclear Deterrence proposed to consider attack from the non-nuclear state with the help of nuclear states as the attack by both. So respond as to the attack by a nuclear state with nuclear deterrence measures. That pretty much means, in a big sense, if Ukraine attacks Russia, we're going to act like nuclear countries like France, Britain, and the United States are backing them up, so we're going to attack them all equally with nuclear arms. That was pretty much what the hypothetical was. Pretty stupid one if you ask me, but that's once again the nuclear saber rattling by the Russians. But moving on from that and on into northern Ukraine, we also got a really cool picture of a Ukrainian soldier training with a Barrett M82 inside of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Pretty cool area to train.
Oh, man. You wouldn't want that dust kicking up from, like, you know, when you fire that gun or something like that. That would be some very spicy dust. And also look at that Waldo thing on the wall over there with the with the question mark above it.
Dude, that thing's got a gut. Might be Kim Jong-un up there.
Michelin.
Man, like with the North Koreans, you gotta go or something like that, you know, because a Korean actually sounds pretty different than Mandarin, interestingly enough. Like, you know what? I wish I could go get like a news presenter from Korea because it really is like a whole experience to listen to how energetic they are in North Korea when they do the news. Like they're kind of like us, but North Korean sort of. But still, I like that guy, man. He's like the spotter up there. He's like, oh, hello. pop him, or something like that. He's like, get him, John. But anyways, still really nice to see the really neat training picture. We also got to see the Skynex system in training in Ukraine. Y'all want to see a Skynex in operation? Well, here we go. Check it out. Oh,
It's fast.
dang. Jeez, dude. Wait a minute. Dude, that was one-time speed right here. Look at the turret traverse on this thing. Jesus.
Jeez, man, that's fast. And also, they got the thing like wearing a blanket out here.
I think it's some kind of like a thermal protector or something like that. It's not like a thermal protector from the cold. I think it disguises the thermal signature of the turret or something like that. Pretty cool, actually. But that turret slewing rate, though, that was like 130 degrees a second. That was insane. Like, you could probably do a full rotation of the turret in like 3 seconds or less. That was really impressive right there. We now see the ops. They tipped the camera over from the recoil. Jeez, that's incredible. Insane right there.
Wow, that turret can go almost vertical.
Yeah, it's a really impressive system, man. Honestly, like this thing is really cool. Sadly, the Ukrainians only have the one, which you see right here. They're really expensive, but still great to know that they're finally starting to try and implement this thing into actual practical service. Moving on from that and up into the Kursk Oblast, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainian offensive has been doing incredibly well, and we have been seeing that the Ukrainians have started to make it very close to Glishkovo, and the Russians are getting desperate to try and help out the brigade before things get too bad. We have seen that they've been trying to dump a large amount of gravel into the river to try and create a stopgap for the destroyed bridges here, and also try and use other creative means to stop the bridge blockages, but these have not really produced incredibly positive results, and it seems as though the Russian brigade on the southern side is still largely trapped without the hope of reinforcements or resupplies any point here in the near future. Moving on from that and over towards the area of Koronivo, we also got to see the Korn group getting shelled by Russian artillery. And we see this Ukrainian soldier here ducking down while the shell hits nearby. Sadly, we can't play the audio because there is someone singing. You know, man, I think they need to start playing like those little like indie hip-hop songs where they're like, cold grass, cool water, or something like that, like with a little ukulele in the background.
Man, I'd be like psychotic to listen to that in the midst of this war. Like it'd actually be kind of reminiscent of probably how these guys are feeling after being in this war for this long.
That's it, man. Something like that. You would hear like that stupid song you would hear in like an Outfitters thing. I can see the cold of the trees, or something like that. It'd be like, oh man, this is horrendous. You know, like
Have the Vietnam songs already made their rounds on these videos? Like the what's that? Like Mountain Something song or whatever that they used to play for the Vietnam era.
Mountain something. I never heard of a title like that, my boy.
And y'all know what I mean. Yeah, somebody in the chat knows the I can't forget the name. It's like Clearwater Creedence Revival Mountain something. I can't remember the name of it. It was like a Vietnam era song.
I think it's just Clearwater Creedence Revival. I think that was a band, but they like
That's a band, yeah.
Let's see, what did they sing? Running Through the Jungle. Some others. I forgot them at the moment. But anyways, we can see some drone attacks right here. Oh, and look at that. It's the little Black Hornet drone. We finally see this thing in use. Like, finally.
Man, you're witnessing like some Gucci equipment being used right here. This thing's crazy expensive.
Gee, but that camera, man, it's not even like, this thing's not even stable. But look, it's flying through the buildings and stuff. It's going up the stairs. It's like the boogeyman up in here. It's just making it through the building. Dude, this is actually insane. Like, you wouldn't get this kind of an option with a normal drone. This is legitimately nuts. And there's the operator right there. He's grabbing the drone back out of the air and moving on their way around the building.
Also, thank you, folks. It was Fortunate Son was one of them. I think Mississippi Queen was the other one. I think. I don't know though. I don't know the songs by name. I just know the band is y'all. Everybody's saying CCR is a short for it. So yeah, that's the band.
Yeah, but nothing to do with a mountain, man. That's why I didn't know what you were talking about. I was like, a mountain? I was like, I don't know about a mountain. I know about a Clearwater Revival or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Kursk area, once again, action is going on, and it seems to be very interesting. But moving on from that and down to our location unknowns, we did get to see Ukrainian Mi-24 flying over the countryside. You know, I can't ever play any of the copyrighted songs, but we can sing them for whatever that counts. Matthew, sing Clearwater Revival.
Man, that's the band though. It's having a song.
Man, I know. Sing Bad Moon on the Rise.
Bad Moon on the. You mean Bad Moon Rising? You mean
Whatever it's called.
I don't even know how to
man.
sing that, man. I don't know the lyrics to that.
Man, let's see here. Mississippi Queen wasn't CCR. Yeah, it wasn't CCR. I forgot who Mississippi Queen was, but it's not CCR.
Mountain. That's where I got the word mountain out of.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
I don't know these things. I wasn't alive during Vietnam, and also I'm not very much into music either. So I'm like butchering it clearly for a good cause. I have good.
And that Mississippi Queen song is the one that went Mississippi Queen or something like that. It's like I did it horrendous right there. I butchered that thing. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see that the Russians are trying to camouflage their Zialis. Check it out. They actually tried to paint it up like a Ukrainian drone, but that didn't fool anyone. They blew it up. So here it comes, and bada bing and a bada boosh, bam, right there, and they blew it up. Very nice to see. Love to know that the Ukrainians aren't falling for the old disguise camouflage trick. But moving on from that, we also get to see some American weapons in use, and hopefully United 24 has licensed their music, or else we'll be in trouble. But here's the clip.
Patriot, Bradley, Abrams, and other American weapons are currently being tested in modern warfare.
I just like to really quickly put out that they're not being tested per se. We actually used all of this in the Gulf War back in the 90s to really good success. Like, you know, like I just have to put that out there because it's not really like American weapons were untested and not battle hardened. All of it was, but I just want to put that out there for y'all just so y'all know.
What has the Ukrainian battlefield revealed about these famous weapons? The US began providing Ukraine with aid almost immediately after the start of the hybrid war in 2014. Initially, it was non-lethal aid.
Oh, we're dealing with lag again, folks. So sorry about this.
Oh man,
very sorry, everyone. Okay, so I think it's over now. I'm so sorry, folks. I'll rewind it a little bit. Here we go.
In 2014. Initially, it was non-lethal aid, but in 2018, Americans agreed to sell the famous javelins. After the beginning of the full-scale war in 2022, this anti-tank guided missile, ATGM, became one of the symbols of Ukrainian resistance. Over the last 2.5 years, the US has provided Kyiv with $175 billion in aid. However, the aid mechanism was designed not to harm American defense. Much of this money remained in the US as the Pentagon replenished its arsenal after every delivery to Ukraine. As a result, US officials have repeatedly noted that American companies benefit from aid to Ukraine. For instance, RTX, which produces the Patriot air defense system, has already opened a new branch in Arizona, and General Dynamics, which manufactures 155mm shells, has done so in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, Lockheed Martin received an $861 million contract to produce HIMARS. No surprise, considering that HIMARS has become one of the headliners of this war, to an extent when Ukrainians affectionately and respectfully refer to it as Mr. HIMARS on social media. And here's why. HIMARS M142, short for High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, was introduced into Ukraine's arsenal in the summer of 2022. Almost immediately, a significant portion of Russian ammunition depots and frontline headquarters fell within the strike range. The most common ammunition is GMLRS rockets of 227mm caliber, with a range of 15 to 84 kilometers. In the fall of 2023, Ukraine also received ATACMS with a strike range of up to 300 kilometers. HIMARS primarily operates at night, entering targets' coordinates and firing takes less than a minute. After the launch, the vehicles immediately leave their positions. By the way, how's the situation with missile defense systems? The number of Patriots different countries have provided to Ukraine is not officially disclosed. However, even a few systems have already demonstrated their power against the most advanced Russian missiles, saving civilian lives almost daily. By the end of 2023, it was reported that Patriots had already intercepted 15 Kinzhals, missiles that Putin had once called impossible to shoot down.
Очень хороший результат.
The Norwegian-American Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System, NASAMS, also performs well. It's the same system that protects the White House. On this war front, it has become even more effective. After combat use, Ukrainian operators
Oh man, Ukraine's all about OPSEC until it's our OPSEC. Anyways.
suggested several design improvements, which the manufacturer implemented. Additionally, they figured out how to reload the system much faster than it was done before. Now Ukrainians managed to reload the system amidst a missile attack and fire another round. Another American veteran showed itself from an unexpected side at war in Ukraine. The famous Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle, IFV, was often called a battle taxi in previous conflicts. Its primary task was to transport infantry to the front line. However, Ukrainian operators have praised its high-quality optics, precise gun, and strong armor protection. In Ukraine, Bradley serves as a battle taxi, an armored observation post, a recovery vehicle, a breakthrough vehicle, and sometimes even as an artillery gun. Together with Bradley, the M1 Abrams main battle tanks entered service with the 47th Brigade. Both vehicles are equipped with the Abrams Reactive Armor Tile (ARAT) system. However, some areas around the turret sides and the entire upper hemisphere remained vulnerable to enemy drones, a new type of weaponry Abrams had not encountered before. As a result, Ukrainian crews upgraded them with the domestic Contact 1 protection kit. Another potential headliner weapon of the war in Ukraine could be aviation. The main intelligence directorate, GER, has shown that they used the legendary Black Hawk helicopters in their raids. Incidentally, Igor Sikorsky, the founder of Sikorsky, who developed the Black Hawk, was born in Kiev, so now his company's creation is defending his historical homeland. The legendary F-16s have also appeared in the Ukrainian skies. However, the US has not yet delivered any. Ukrainians have just begun flying the fighter jets provided by European countries. But judging by how Ukrainians use other weapons, they will certainly find a way to use the F-16s effectively and painfully to the enemy.
Really cool. And good to know that the good old Republic's weaponry is over there overseas. But moving on from that, we also get to see some trench clearing training as well in the 4th Brigade. Check them out. They're just clearing trenches, much like anyone would clear a house or something along those lines. Really nice to know. And we also get to see the Russian casualty report as well, which was very nice.
Juicy again. We got 13 juicies in one day. I'm telling you what, that's beautiful to see. Beautiful. I love to see it. Also, the troop losses are crazy. The vehicles, the tanks, man, it's getting crazy out of here. Tell us more.
Man, and it's juicy! And a big shout out to Miss Disa for pointing out that 74 artillery pieces being lost is the second highest day in the war in the artillery loss category, and the second highest day in the drone category as well, with 115 being shot down. And now to the total losses. 1,250 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 12 APCs, 73 supply trucks, 15 main battle tanks, 74 artillery pieces, 115 drones, 1 MLRS, and 13 special equipment vehicles. Overall, it is a very impressive day, and we are happy to see that the Ukrainians have been able to inflict high losses on the Russians again. Moving on from that, though, and over into Vovchansk, we were able to see some interesting battle occurrences happening in this area. We were able to see the Ukrainians clearing the plant, the Vovchansk aggregate plant, as it's called. We can see them moving down the hallways and generally having a time of it, making sure to clear those Russians out. Moving on from that, we then got to see that the Russians tried to drop a bomb on the aggregate plant right here. Bam! Right down there at the bottom of the camera. They dropped an air bomb onto it, trying to, once again, knock out the Ukrainians that were taking the plant, but that sadly didn't help out the Russians too much, but it was a very good day for the Ukrainians. Hopefully the Russians will one day learn that they ought to just give up and go home while they're still behind. Moving on from that, we also got to see that the Russians were watching as well as the Ukrainians started to take the aggregate plant and the remainder of it. Actually, sorry, correction here. I believe this is actually the Ukrainians. Oh, yes, this is actually a Ukrainian drone providing fire support, as it's called. And we can see them flying right into that building right there and really supporting that fire.
Oh man, bliat. This building's already seen rough days, bliat. But the Ukrainians are going to finish it off, take down the support, you know, bliat.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, they really are. And I saw someone say, are y'all drill sergeants? Oh, no, we're not drill sergeants. We haven't been in the military before. And we can see them continuing to strike multiple buildings around the aggregate plant with their heavy drone force.
Oh, bliat. I'm told in the live chat that someone was getting bribed by Turkey, bliat. Oh dear. The whole scheme grows deeper, bliat. Turkey does Turkey things, and it happens to involve the United States.
Oh man, the turkeys are cruising for a bruising these days. I don't think the president will be giving a pardon to the turkeys this year. But moving on from that, and on into our next clip, we also got to see the 92nd hitting some drones up in the northern area of Ukraine. Oh, we're going to be muting that, but boom, there goes one. There goes another. We're going to be muting that completely right there. There goes another. Oh, here comes another one. Whoa, look at this. This is a flying
Man,
wall.
this is like a Horton flying wing right here, right?
Yeah.
In drone form.
Then we got another Zala and another one of these Bielas. What the hell's this one? Huh. That is weird. We also got an Orlan here. Oh, and it's gone. And we got another Brilla, I believe is how it's called. Bam! And they got it. And another one. Bam! They just keep getting these. Oh, man. Oh, goodness, man. That bot right there got me a good laugh, man. I really appreciated that one. That was a funny comment. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on from this clip. Big shout out to the 92nd Brigade for being able to knock out such a large volume of drones in that area just over one day. And moving on to the Seversk area, we also got to see some Ukrainian tanks in action in this area. All right, we're going to be muting the Fonk Chad music as this Ukrainian tank drives around looking for a drink.
Man, the Ukrainian trank. Goodness.
Bro, whip out the trank. Man, we're going to storm the Russian positions. We're going to slam them with trank.
Jeez, I think they've got plenty of that going on. The vodka's done a number on them. Man,
Man.
these are some thick earmuffs on this guy's like headpiece right here. That's crazy.
Oh, that's a tanker's helmet, by the way. Very normal stuff in Eastern Europe. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see the work of the 54th Brigade in the area as well. Check it out. Oh, we're going to be muting that once again. The same songs. I don't know what the hell they're doing. This is one of the tank crew, by the way. I don't know what they were doing right there. Like, was this like supposed to be chiropractic or something like that? Because it looks like they're trying to like help out his spine or something. I don't know. But then they're working with.
He should have never disobeyed orders, Bliat, and his neck would have been saved.
Dude, they said, as a member of the 54th Brigade, you must have the neck lengthened. It's something like that. It's like, what the hell is this?
See out the top a little easier, Bliat. The seats are low.
I guess you could say that you're going to be knacking it. That you sound like that. Oh, man, we can see a little American patch right there. Great to see. We can also see the T-72 as it exists right here, the one that they're operating. Oh, a little gun movement right there. We can now see them riding around the town. This guy's got a padded tanker helmet and multicam. Pretty unique. We can also see them taking the cover off for the main gun right there. Gun's a little rusty, but that's fine. It still works. We can see them fueling up an M113 with juice. And that's the end of that clip. But really nice to see and good to know that they're out there doing their thing. Meanwhile, we also got to see a Russian Strela in action as filmed by the Russian MOD itself. Oh. So it looks rough. there goes the missile. Ah, the sounds of Libya. Brings me back to the early 2010s.
Look at that piece of junk.
Man, I think Mattress Firm went out of business because it looks like they took a lot of the mattresses and tacked them onto the side of this thing. Like, good lord, like it's crazy stuff. But moving on from that, we also got to see down in the area behind Ukrainian lines that a Shahed was downed that was using a Starlink terminal. Uh-oh, that doesn't look good. Goodness gracious, I mean, that's terrible right there. There's also a wiener drawn on that little piece of the Starlink. Very interesting. We will be submitting that for evidence, and still very interesting to note. But very interesting. Also, the hot dog man is asking for his wiener back. Aw, man. But moving on from that and down on into the Pokrovsk area, we also get to see an anti-drone mesh. And a lot of them, actually. Here's an anti-drone mesh. Here's another one. Here's another view. Oh, well, that wasn't enough? Here's another one. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's pretty nice. Dang, that's a big one. God, that's a huge. Good lord!
It's like professionally done. I love to see it.
Yeah, it's really cool, actually. I got to say, a big shout out to these folks. They're doing great work. But moving on from that and down into the area around Pokrovsk, once again, we got to see them slamming even more Russians. Check this out. Thermal footage. You can see the Russians getting peppered by a cluster round right there. And you can actually see the geolocation right there as well. Wonderful to know. The Russians will be apparently enjoying a lot of salt and pepper, having it sprinkled on top of them like that. But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see some more FPV drones getting hit around the area of Volodar, while someone apparently is eating a cookie in the microphone. Listen to that again. That's what I sound like when I eat a cookie and I'm a little bit too close to the microphone. It goes, it just sounds like that. It's like that's an interesting noise. But we can see right here, the drone coming on down is once again getting a brilla. And bada bing and a bada boom. Bam! And then they got it. And an Orlan. And when you see right now,
I was going to say, that sound was a hot dog man on a Saturday night. Oh, goodness.
Man, I enjoy frolicking in the woods. Oh, man.
Frolicking.
Oh man, you know what I mean. But anyways, also speaking of which, this drone, Matthew, is called Sky Ruzo Riz. So I guess it's risen up them Russians up there in the sky with bombs. And
Also, good evening to BC Skyman, by the way. BC Skyman said, good evening, we're in Florida. You're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, BC.
Get out of there!
Get out. Yeah, like, get out. Like, that place is in some trouble right now. You see that big old hurricane coming up. It's going to be at Category 4. Like, watch out. Be safe down there.
Yeah, do be safe down there. Hopefully you're in the right spot of Florida. Because I think it's going to be hitting the panhandle mostly. Oh.
Actually, a lot of the, bottom part of Florida is going to get storm surge, too, surprisingly.
Man, you know what's crazy? The trains will still run late. Like, they're not on time. They're almost always late. But still, they will run. Bam! And another one. And a bang! And a bam! And another one. Check this out. Bang! And that's the end of that clip. Impressive stuff right there. And we're about to be moving. Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now. I hope it didn't kill the stream just then.
Oh, it didn't. Thank goodness. Thanks to my quick work here at Enforcer HQ, this stream is saved. Can I get an LSA in the chat for that? I mean, I would be greatly appreciative. But anyways, after that, we're getting back into the clip. So we can see, once again, they're striking them drones. All right, and that's a very interesting one. We'll be getting rid of that. That's a little too weird for my taste. But we can see right here, they're slamming into another drone. Wha bang! Dang! Very nice. Oh! And another one. And another one. Alabama's getting the weak side of the hurricane. Well, guess what? We may be getting the weak side of the hurricane, but we also have the weak side of the internet, too. Raise hell, praise hell! No internet for no one. But anyways, moving on.
Unless we got that prison working, at least we got that.
We got another $2 billion from the U.S. federal government. We could pave all the roads. We could get everyone good internet. We might even be able to build a proper public transport system. But damn it, them prisons are going to be fine. Screw everyone. It's like, what?
She came out and said, "Good news, everybody. I know everybody's been asking for those brand new high-tech prisons, and they're here to stay. Oh, praise the Lord." Everybody said, literally nobody asked for new prisons. Like, nobody wanted prisons. We want education. We want education. Please.
Well, I can tell you I can't provide you with a good education, but I'll tell you I'll provide you with a place a lot like an Alabamian high school. God bless you. New prison. Oh, man. Oh, goodness. It's an inside joke. If you're from Alabama, you know. But moving on from that and down into the area around Verbove, we also got to see a HIMARS strike on the Russians. Check this out. There they are down there. They're in a big group. Oh, and a HIMARS strike right there. Arpturf said, "Who runs on imprisoning their own constituents?" Well, you haven't been to Alabama, have you? Oh, man. Oh, goodness. The state's not that bad. It's but sometimes the interesting side of the state really does shine through, and you just wonder. It's never been good. Like, well, at least on that part of things, at least on the administration side, it's never been good. It never has. If y'all are from Alabama, you'll know that like most of the prior governors are currently in prison right now because of corruption. It's a very interesting thing. Like Governor Bentley. He's going to sit there. Oh, let's see here. I got my mistress with me, and I don't really want to go back to Montgomery to get my wallet. Send the government helicopter to Montgomery to go pick up the wallet. It's like, what? It's like, are you crazy? Oh, my goodness. And then the guy before him, what was his name, Matthew?
Before Bentley? I don't even really know.
Jeez.
Was there even a governor before Bentley?
No, I think it was run by a cabal or something like that.
It was just nobody.
Yeah, I think
it's empty space.
Yeah, and then back when the state was in a different party, it was no better back then either. It's a very, very interesting state that way. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on into our next clip, where we got to see a Russian commander burning a car once again. The Russian soldiers are using the cars on booze cruises. Russian commanders don't like it. And he's just dousing it in gas, just getting it nice and warm. Maybe he's splashing some on his shoe. And threw some away, probably the cap. Whoa, what's this? Is this a gallon of piss? Oh, no, it's gas. It's more gas. It just looks like piss. You ever thought about putting that in the car so that way it's not just, like, on the metal?
Alice, that's too much thinking for that guy.
Yeah. The commander in Russia, this guy. He's now going to light the plastic bottle on fire and throw it on top of the car, and it then just floated away. So now he's going to try and light the gas directly on the car. So let's see if he wins a Darwin Award here. This guy behind the camera is whispering. Oh, man, he got caught in the
fire
flash.
burned my face, blood. How dare the fire burn my face?
Dude, look, the expansion of the gas actually flung his hat off before he even went flying backwards. Look.
Stupid. So stupid.
What an idiot. And then he's going to catch the entire wheat field on fire that this car is in. This guy is certified a Darwin winner right here. Yeah, I'm Vlad, and welcome to Jackass. Whoosh!
Yeah, he turned into like Squidward behind the camera. That fire like messed his brain up even worse. He's like, it's like, well, what even was that? Did you hear that?
Dude, he turned feral. He turned feral. He went. He's like, what the hell, dude? He's about to be like that guy down there in that port in Yemen. You remember that guy, Matthew, in Al Hadida, who was driving through in the pickup truck as the port was catching on fire, and he was going, something like that.
Oh yeah,
He's that
I
guy.
remember that.
Dude, he moved to Russia.
It's him.
No, but man, what a crazy video right there. Who didn't see that coming? But moving on from that and all the way down to Kherson for one of our final clips, we also get to see the Russians getting slammed down here by the 73rd Naval Special Operations Center. So check this one out. Oh man! While we're watching this clip and you'll watch the Russians get plastered, I'll read y'all a comment of a bot. Picture Republic said, "The most insane bullshit I've ever heard. All the U.S. has ever done is put in friendly leaders in the countries where they have interests. So hypocritical and stupid. How about you shut your mouth? How about you make me? Oh, how about you make me, idiot? Instead of running your mouth, because we don't go around to countries we like." Installing leaders. I don't think we've installed a single prime minister in the UK, a single president of France, or a chancellor of Germany. I don't think we've installed a single one. We have in Iran, we have in Vietnam, and other places. But why don't you come and make me then, if that's what you want to say? But anyways, with that's the end of the clip. Really nice to see them blasting the Russians while we blast an idiot. And so moving on from that, now the southern region of Kherson, it's time for us to move on up to Kyiv to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 945 of the war. And so without further ado, we are back at the UN, and he's making another address. So without
We want speech, please.
long-lasting speech. And hopefully I can get this in English. And I hope that there is no Ukrainian dub over this, because if so, that'll be weird. But without further ado, here it is.
Thank you very much.
Дякую.
Your leaders, your
Шановні лідери,
excellencies. Today I
We
want
like
to
try
tell
to
you
find
about
like real quick like
хочу
a version of this that
розказ-
doesn't have the dub on it, because that dub is like impossible to like listen to if we can find another version.
Man, honestly, I'd agree with you, man. I don't even know why in the world we were listening to this. I'm going to find it. I'm going to try and find it 100% right here, right now. And let's see. Let me go to Zelenskyy. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. Office President of Ukraine. Maybe that's what I need to look for. Yes, here we go. Well, that doesn't really help out much, does it? Did they get rid of President Zelenskyy? Oh, here we go. There we go. And here we go. All right, so let's see here if I can get this. Matthew, are you searching for one as well? Because I just went straight to their YouTube channel, and it looks like it's kind of the
Thank you
same
very
thing.
much.
Дякую.
Your leaders,
Yep, it is. So
Let's see here. Let me see. Zelenskyy speaks at UN. Let's see if that results in anything here. Oh, let's see here. Looks like PBS NewsHour might have had it. Let's see. Yep, I'll send you the link to it real quick in Discord. That'll probably be the.
I got it. It's from the United Nations. This one's good, and it'll be copyright free because it's the UN. So I had to make sure that we got one copyright free because I saw CNN had a coverage of it, but they probably try and come in and copyright us. So here it is. Let me see if this has a Ukrainian dub over it.
Thank you very much. Dear leader.
Okay, so it does not. So we are golden, and we found it straight from the UN, straight from the source. Maybe the only thing the UN has been useful for this whole time. But without further ado, here is the speech from Zelenskyy in English.
Thank you very much. Dear leaders, your excellencies. Today I want to tell you about a day that has already passed and a day that must never come. On the night of March 4th, 2022, I received one of the most terrifying reports since the beginning of a full-scale Russian invasion against Ukraine. The report was about Russian tanks firing directly at the buildings of our Ukrainian nuclear power plant, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest one in Europe, 6 nuclear reactors. The Russian army stormed this facility just as brutally as any other during this war. without thinking about the consequences, possibly disastrous. This was one of the most horrifying moments of the war, when no one could know how Russian strikes on the nuclear facility would end, and everyone in Ukraine was reminded of what Chernobyl means. Now, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remains occupied by Russian forces, unfortunately, and it's at risk of a nuclear incident. This is the major source of radiation danger in Europe, possibly in the world. That's why, in the peace formula I presented, the first point is about nuclear safety. In Ukraine, we know exactly what we are dealing with. And I want to thank you, the General Assembly members, for adopting a resolution in July this year on the safety of nuclear facilities in Ukraine. Most in the world understand what's at stake. The General Assembly demanded that Russian return control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to Ukraine. Only then real nuclear security will return to Europe and the world. And now about the day that must never come. Since Russia can't defeat our people's resistance on the battlefield, Putin is looking for other ways to break the Ukrainian spirit. One of his methods is targeting our energy infrastructure. And these are deliberate Russian attacks on our power plants and the entire energy grid. As of today, Russia has destroyed all our thermal power plants and a large part of our hydroelectric capacity. This is how Putin is preparing for winter, hoping to torment millions of Ukrainians, ordinary families, women, children, ordinary towns, ordinary villages. Putin wants to leave them in the dark and cold this winter, forcing Ukraine to suffer and surrender. Just imagine, please, your country with 80% of its energy system gone, with such a destroyed part of the system. What kind of life would that be? Recently, I received yet another alarming report from our intelligence. Now Putin does seem to be planning attacks on our nuclear power plants and their infrastructure, aiming to disconnect the plants from the power grid. With the help of satellites, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, satellites of other countries. Russia is getting images and detailed information about the infrastructure of our nuclear power plants. But what does this really threaten? Any missile or drone strike, any critical incident in the energy system could lead to a nuclear disaster. A day like that must never come. And Moscow needs to understand this, and this depends in part on your determination to put pressure on the aggressor. These are nuclear power plants. They must be safe. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, in the fall of 2022, I proposed a comprehensive strategy to end the war and to ensure security, and I presented the peace formula at a highly inclusive political platform for world leaders, the G20 summit in Indonesia, representing billions of citizens from all parts of the globe. And it's important for us that all these people can understand us, understand that Ukraine wants to end this war more than anyone in the world. War always poses a threat to many. You all see in the media and read in reports what is happening in Ukraine because of Russia's war. It's something many are imagining happening to themselves. And yes, the smoke from fires in war-torn cities can reach other countries. And if, God forbid, Russia causes a nuclear disaster at one of our nuclear power plants, radiation will not respect state borders. And unfortunately, various nations could feel the devastating effects. Many are concerned, but the deepest understanding of war is always found in the home it destroys. It's the Ukrainian people who feel the full pain of this war. It's Ukrainian children who are learning to distinguish the sounds of different types of artillery and drones because of Russia's war. It's our people who are forcefully separated by occupation because Putin decided he could do whatever he wants. It's our heroic soldiers who are giving their lives to defend our country from invaders trying to steal our land. That's why we say, rightfully so, there can be no just peace without Ukraine. And I thank every leader, every country that supports us in this, that understands us, that sees how Russia, a country more than 20 times larger than Ukraine in territory, still wants even more land, which is insane, and is seizing it day by day while wanting to destroy its neighbor. And Russia found very special bodies for that. North Korea and Iran, telling choice of friends. And now every neighbor of Russia in Europe and Central Asia feels that the war could come to them as well, and just think what kind of losses that would mean for the world. And I thank nearly 100 nations and international organizations that have supported the peace formula. It's truly a global community: Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, North America, the Pacific region, all united by the peace formula. And I am glad that the first peace summit was so reminding of the UN General Assembly. Everyone was equal. All nations that participated in the peace summit, large and small, no veto right, no blocking authority, those that have been independent for ages and those that have only recently gained independence, those that have gone through wars themselves, and those accustomed to peace, all were equal. That is what Russia hates the most and cannot control. That's why Russia says the peace formula doesn't suit it. Here at the UN, I've already met with leaders from India, Guatemala, Japan and Italy, Turkey and Finland, Canada, Paraguay, Slovenia, Germany and others, and my meetings will continue. These are different, absolutely, parts of the world and various political waves of life, but they share the same understanding. Peace is needed, and it must be a real, just peace. Unfortunately, at the UN, it's impossible to truly and fairly resolve matters of war and peace because too much depends in the Security Council on the veto power. When the aggressor exercises veto power, the UN is powerless to stop the war, but the peace formula can. Once again, there is no veto power in it. That's why it's the best opportunity for peace. Everyone is equal, and it's effective and comprehensive. When some propose alternatives, half-hearted settlement plans, so-called sets of principles, it not only ignores the interests and suffering of Ukrainians, who are affected by the war the most, it not only ignores reality, but also gives Putin the political space to continue the war and pressure the world to bring more nations under control. Any parallel or alternative attempts to seek peace are, in fact, efforts to achieve a lull instead of an end to the war. As a global initiative, the peace formula has already existed for 2 years, and maybe somebody wants a Nobel Prize for their political biography for frozen truths instead of real peace, but the only prizes Putin will give you in return are more suffering and disasters. We must restore nuclear safety. Energy must stop being used as a weapon. We must ensure food security. We need to bring home all our captured soldiers and civilians forcibly deported to Russia. We must uphold the UN Charter and guarantee our right, Ukraine's right to territorial integrity and sovereignty, just as we do for any other nation. We need to withdraw the Russian occupiers, which will bring an end to the hostilities in Ukraine, and we must hold those responsible for war crimes accountable. We need to prevent ecocide and stop the destruction of nature caused by the war. And we must not allow a second or third phase of this Russian invasion. And we need to make it clear the war is over. This is the peace formula. What part of this could be unacceptable to anyone who upholds the UN Charter? If someone in the world seeks alternatives to any of these points or tries to ignore any of them, it likely means they themselves want to do a part of what Putin is doing. The point they ignore reveals the desire they're hiding. And when the Chinese-Brazilian duo tries to grow into a choir of voices, with someone in Europe, with someone in Africa saying something alternative to a full and just peace, the question arises, what is the true interest? Everyone must understand you will not boost your power at Ukraine's expense. And the world has already been through colonial wars and conspiracies of great powers at the expense of those who are smaller. Every country, including China, Brazil, European nations, African nations, Middle East, all understand why this must remain in the past. And Ukrainians will never accept why anyone in the world believes that such a brutal colonial past, which suits no one today, can be imposed on Ukraine now instead of a normal, peaceful life. I want peace for my people, real peace and just peace. And I'm asking for your support from all nations of the world. We do not divide the world. I ask the same of you, do not divide the world. Be united nations. And that will bring us peace. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
And Rom Slava.
Virom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 945 of the war. And that moves us on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. Every single one of y'all. And did someone just ask if this stream is live? Did someone ask that question?
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. Yes, we are live. And it appears that the person who asked that question was, in fact, a fellow by the name of Dustin Mayo. Asking, is this live, apparently? Yes, this is, in fact, live. It may sound like it's pre-recorded. Maybe even sound like we're talking off of the script. If it does, we're doing an incredibly good job. But no, this is, in fact, live right here and right now. And so with that, we're about to be moving on to the second segment where we actually get to talk to all of y'all in real time. It's an incredibly fun segment. But nevertheless, before we even get into that, I have to thank everyone who has been here tonight and has been enjoying this show. It's been an incredible thing to see that even with the massive lag issues that we had at the beginning of the stream, we still ended up getting to 10,000 live viewers tonight at the peak, and 60,000 people have watched this stream at this point. We're entirely honored and highly humbled to know that many of y'all find this to be your channel to get the news on what's going on around the world every single day. If you're new to this channel and you did enjoy it, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd be very happy to have you join us and listen to the news from this channel every single day. And also, I just got to say, I was wandering around today and there was a certain place that I was at. It's a meme forum of a sort. I gotta tell about this because I got a huge laugh out of it, and I just gotta let folks know. Sometimes we see things that we aren't supposed to see, but this meme forum is a very angry place. People there hate anything and everything. Matthew knows what I'm bringing up right now because I told him about it earlier, and I found this to be really high honor. But the thing is that people there hate everything. Like, they really do. I don't think anyone likes anything on the specific platform. But the joke is that if someone hates you on this app, on this meme page of a sort, that means you must have made it, because people actually know you there and they think you're mainstream enough, or you're at least popular enough, that they ought to hate you. And today I saw that we were actually on that meme page and folks were hating on us. I'd have never been more honored. I feel like that's better than winning an Emmy, because I did not ever think that we would make it to the point that people would bring us up on a meme page, a meme app, and actually trash us. Like, I was actually really honored by that. Some people were saying 4chan, 8chan. No. It's one that y'all may have not even heard of. It's one that I've been kind of looking at for a while. It's not like the greatest place on the internet, but there are some interesting memes on it here and there. But still, it's pretty interesting to see that we got trash there. And it literally was just like the most random trashing. Someone was just like, God, I hate the enforcement. I was like, yes! I was like, yes! I was like, we've made it! Because if you get hated there, you've made it. I mean, we were being hated up there with the best. Like, people who have like 1 million subscribers and stuff. We were in the same comment section as them. So I was really honored to see that. Really, really cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Just had to put that out there just in case if anyone's watching from that meme platform, that app. I appreciate being hated there. It's quite a high honor. But with that, we are on to the final question, that Matthew's asked you all tonight, and then we're going to be moving on into all of the super chats and live chats that we have as well. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, we have one more poll to address, and it's actually on the Israeli topic. To switch back to that real quick, it says the Israeli military says it'll enter Lebanon against Hezbollah, and is the operation going to be easy? So 40% said yes, Israel will easily invade Lebanon, 31% said no, it's going to be a tough fight, and 22% said it sounds semi-difficult. And I think, honestly, it sounds a little semi-difficult, because even though Hezbollah is a ragtag force, they are nonetheless pretty familiar with how Lebanon's laid out, and Israel will have an uphill battle on their hands. Israel is much better equipped than the Hezbollah forces, but it depends on who else jumps into this. And also, we do have to factor in the fact that Hezbollah apparently has tunnels all over the place, so that's going to make things more difficult as well. So I'm with the 22%. It's not going to be super difficult or super easy. It's going to be somewhere right in the middle. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's going to be very easy to invade the area. It's going to be very hard to hold it down long term. Like Matthew was saying, there's a lot of tunnels in the area. It's also a very asymmetrical kind of warfare that they're going to be fighting, kind of like they did with Hamas. So that kind of warfare is going to end up being fairly difficult. So easy invasion, hard to hold it down beyond just actually moving in. So that's what I would generally say, at least based off of the trends that we've seen in the past, because the Israelis have always easily moved in, but once they move in, it's been very tough from that point forward, and it gets tougher each day. But with that, hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, Matthew, bring us on into them questions. I understand that we have plenty of them.
Yes, indeed. So jumping into our final super chat segment of the night, this one's going to go to Thumbstick NA, who's a first-time super chatter on the channel, and they put in a $60 donation. And thank you very much, Thumbstick, for that support. And also, it's great to have you as well. And it said, I've been looking at your channel for a while, and I just never say things. And I love your guys' channel, and very interesting, and stay safe to all.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Thumbsticks NA. And thank you for really enjoying the channel and supporting it for the first time ever. It means a lot to us because folks like you hear this speech a lot. I know you do because you've been around for a lot, but folks like you do help this channel to keep on running. And we always have to give a huge thanks and let everyone know y'all's names and give you all a huge round of applause here on this channel, because y'all are the only folks who make it possible for us to do this as a job and keep this news rolling. So I got to thank you so much for that. And I hope that addresses that part fairly well, but thank you so much for the kind words as well. And thank you for being an American lacquer and finally coming out and saying that you like the channel, because we love to be here. We love having all of y'all here and getting to talk to y'all and hear the interesting points that folks bring up, getting to see a funny bot here and there pop into the chat. It's a fun time. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality every single day. And so a big thanks to you, and I hope that you stay safe as well here in the near future. Hopefully you're not in the same area we are, because there's going to be a little hurricane passing through. Not the funnest of things, but it still is a thing. But with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Michael Payne, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Michael, for that $50 support and helping get the lights on. And he says, can you upload the old episode where Chinese leaf springs in the ditches were discovered? And those days were intense.
Man, I wish I could. I can't think of the Chinese leaf springs, like where they were. Man, I can't even remember that clip. I remember the leaf spring on the pansier that founded the leaf spring army, but I can't think of those specific Chinese leaf springs in a ditch, actually. So much has happened over the course of this war. It's actually crazy to think about because I think we did the math, and I've watched like tens of thousands of clips over the course of the war of everything that's going on, and so I can't actually remember that one. That one has apparently fallen back into the old Enforcer archives in the back of the brain to be pulled out maybe 2 years from now and spoken about as like a fun fact, but then it'll be promptly forgotten then for another few years. The record keeping in my brain is about as bad as the Imperium of Mans in Warhammer 40k, but beyond that, I gotta say, huge thanks to you once again for support. I wish we could, but those days, the early days of the war, were really intense. No one knew what was going on, and the whole thing was unpredictable and new. But now that things are predictable and kind of set in place, it really takes a lot for people to really get interested and excited about anything. Because beyond that, it's just kind of the war as usual, which is really wild to think about. Because a normal day in the war now would have been insane 3 years ago. No one would have even thought that the Russians could have been losing more than 1,300 soldiers a day, but now they do that on average, pretty much. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one. And what do we got, Matthew?
So our next one here is going to go to Andy L., who is, of course, a channel legend. And he put in a $50 donation as well. And thank you very much, Andy, for that support. And he said, I hit at 1,300 yards yesterday, and the goal is 1,760 yards.
Damn.
And also he said, please take a question from the chat, and long live the LSA.
And long live the LSA. Andy L., you're already out shooting me by a factor of 2, because I have been able to hit out to 600 yards, but I've never even gotten the chance to shoot anything farther than 600 yards away. So I'm wishing you the best of luck. 1,760 yards is one hell of a shot. I think that's close to a mile, isn't it? 1,760 yards. And that is equivalent to exactly 1 mile. So Andy L. is trying to hit the 1 mile shot, and best of luck to you. That will be so difficult. It will be so tough. But I believe in you, Andy L. If anyone could do it, it will be you. I have 100%.
Also, he's got the gun to do it too, man. He's got the kit, the whole kit, the scope, the gun, everything.
Yeah, he does. And I know that Andy L. can do it, because if anyone can do it, he's going to do it. And so I got to thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for keeping us up to date on that, by the way, because that is incredibly cool to hear. And we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor, Andy L. But of course, long live the Leaf Spring Army. And what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
All right, so this live chat question goes to Christopher Long. He said, do you think that Israel will stop the war with Hamas now to start this new war in Lebanon against Hezbollah?
They probably will, but then again, they kind of have already won the war against Hamas, so they could keep a smaller force inside of Hamas to kind of do the policing and peacekeeping, and then send most of them up towards Lebanon. So they could keep them going, but the one with Hamas probably will end up going cold, just because they're going to be diverting a lot of their efforts into Lebanon instead. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, from what I'm seeing right now. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, Andy L. Because once again, if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be sitting in these chairs right now. And so big thanks to you once again. We are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jigglesworth, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Jigglesworth for that support as well. And it said, Great Lakes Division of the LSA checking in. And why do you think Poland is ready to step in because of the power plants now and not when the Russians were shelling them earlier in the war?
The reason why they're stepping in now is because intelligence suggests that they're actually trying to actively blow one up and cause a meltdown or a irreparable situation that can't really be avoided. That's kind of the reason why they're starting to want to get directly involved now. Also, earlier on in the war, they didn't really know what was going to be happening, so everyone wasn't really that gung-ho to say that there were going to be definitive red lines on much of anything except for the bare minimum, but things have changed greatly, and that's why they're really starting to hop in now versus earlier in the war when they really weren't. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I would know. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jigglesworth. And I hope that does address that well. But also a big hello to the Great Lakes, the greatest lakes in all of the world. These are truly lakes and the greatest of lakes. My favorite lake, if anyone asked and said, "What's your favorite lake?" Why, I don't know why you'll be asking that question, but if I had to answer the question, I would actually say that my favorite lake of the Great Lakes is Lake Superior. I just like the shape of it. I think it's pretty cool. But also, Matthew, what do you think is your favorite Great Lake?
Honestly, I really don't have a favorite Great Lake. I really don't know much about the lakes up here. Like, I've really never studied them hardly at all, except I know there's some neat boats that go on the lakes. Excuse me. But I don't know. I guess the one closest to New York, I guess. Where's the falls at?
They're down here.
Yeah, I would say wherever the closest lake is. That's my favorite.
Man, hell, you gotta be in a
Yeah, I don't know nothing.
Man, let's see. What is everyone saying right here? Some people, Superior. Hey, thank you, Richard McGurl. You're agreeing with me. It was the superior choice. Of course it was. Of course it was. Between Erie and Ontario. Oh, interesting. So you're kind of picking the Niagara Falls area as well. Let's see. People surf Lake Superior when... Oh, and the Chippewa on down, and the big lake they call Big Sugarby, or whatever the Edmund Fitzgerald. Let's see here. What are some other people saying? Lake Ontario, Matthew. Lake Ontario. Let's see here. Oh, who disappeared? Oh no. Goodness gracious. Goodbye, Donald. But anyways, let's see here. Hello from Michigan. Well, I guess you would be a big fan of Lake Michigan, wouldn't you? But let's see here. The one in Chicago. That would be Lake Michigan. So you like, let's see here, the Canadian side of the lakes. Oh, Miss D, that's a pretty interesting. Ontario is cool because of Tirana. We know of people who are around that area. Man, you know who I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about, man. Jeez, bad taste in the mouth. I tell you what.
Bad taste in the mouth. They set a bad standard for Canadians the world over. The specific people we're talking about. They're the kind of people who smile in your face while all the time they're trying to backstab you and take your place. Not great people. Not great people. I'll say that they can really fool you until you get to know them, and then they're very questionable people. But anyways, no, I'm not saying that about all Canadians. By the way, I know someone's about to come and say, "Oh, I cannot believe that you would say that about such and such and such Canadians." I'm not saying that about Canadians. I'm saying that it's about a specific group of people we know who are.
No, I'm not letting that taint my view of Canadians, because I will say generally overall, like all the Canadians I've ever met, even the ones on this channel right here, they are very friendly. Like Canadians are actually very friendly across the board. There are, of course, a couple of bad eggs here and there. Unfortunately, we've dealt with a couple of the bad eggs just out of just happenstance, which is unfortunate because it did leave a bad taste in their mouth. But overall, though, Canadians are very friendly from my experience.
Yeah, the Canadians are really friendly. It's just that, of course, like Matthew said, we ended up running into like the only ones that aren't, and then they leave a bad reputation. But you know, that is what it is, I suppose. But it's really annoying when you deal with people and they're so superficial like that. I wish I could get into a lot more detail with you all about that. But yeah, those folks were something else. I'll say that for sure. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But still, I would say Lake Superior, I just like it. Not really because of like the geography or anything or the cities around it. Thunder Bay, though, is one hell of a cool name for a city, not going to lie. But Lake Superior is just cool, and personally, it's just because it's shaped like... shaped kind of like a shark tooth, at least to me, and that's what makes it look cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again for support and being one of our LSA members from the Great Lakes. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, so our next super chat here is going to go to Real News Network, who puts in a $50 donation. And it's saying it's your
Hey!
first ever super chat on the stream, but I know you've been in the live chat for quite some time, so I'm not sure if YouTube's
Hey!
accurate on that, but thank you very much for that support. And they said, I've been watching your stream for weeks now and feel guilty. Noble cause, and keep it up, guys. LSA, and my real name is Naresh L.
Hey, and hello, Naresh. It's good to know who's behind Real News Network. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support and watching the stream for weeks now. I actually feel like you've been watching for longer than weeks. I think it's been a couple of months at least, because I've been seeing you in the live chat a load all the time. But I gotta thank you so much once again for really enjoying the channel and supporting it. It is folks like you who helped this thing to keep running. I say that so much, but it's true. And I gotta thank you so much once again for really enjoying it, really feeling like you want to support it and help it to keep it rolling. No one has to, but nevertheless, you decided it's worthwhile enough that you would. And so, huge thank you once again. Thank you for saying that's a noble cause, and we will make sure to keep it up, Naresh. And thank you so much once again. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to Zyper Sniper 1. Also, channel legend, by the way, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Zyper Sniper, for that support. And he said, I heard that Jens Stoltenberg are about to leave as the leader of NATO. And what will that mean for NATO itself? And will we see a stronger leadership or a weaker one?
Jens Stoltenberg, the General Secretary of NATO, he actually really doesn't have a position where they really do anything, because NATO's power comes through the vote of all the countries that are in NATO. So he kind of just sits there as the mouthpiece and representative of the NATO alliance, but that doesn't really mean too much in the big scheme of things. So really, it won't mean much in a change of leadership. Like, will we be stronger? Will we be weaker? Yeah, that position really doesn't matter in that regard. It really matters what the United States and other leading nations like France, the UK, and Germany, along with Poland, will want to do in the future. And so, once again, it doesn't really fall on the general secretary. It really falls more so on the presidents, prime ministers, and chancellors of these countries that make up NATO. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support, Zyper Sniper, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Grand Moff Clubby, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Grand, for that support. I was trying to see here real quick. I was scrambling to go back and look. Not like Diddy said, not scrambling and scraping for shit, but just scrambling. Let's see here.
Ain't nothing like a Diddy party. Ain't nothing like a Diddy party.
Let's see. Geez, man, let me scroll back up. It's not saying it's your first, but I think it's your first. I don't know, though, but let us know. But thank you very much for that support, that $20 support. And it said, this is my first stream on this channel, and it just subscribed, and your news coverage is quite informative.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Grandma Clubby. First time watching, and you found it worthwhile to support the channel. I got to thank you for that, because no one has to, and so anyone supporting the channel is a shock to us, and then especially on the first night that you're watching, that's a huge shock. And I got to thank you so much for the support and really enjoying it enough to support it on night one. Huge thanks to you. And also, thank you for saying it's quite informative. We try our best to make sure that this is as information dense as we can possibly make it. And hopefully tonight it was once again information dense and kind of funny. Because we do try and throw in jokes and make sure to keep it a little light, because, you can either cry through it or laugh through it. It's going to happen either way. I would try and laugh through it if I can. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, Maddie, I saw someone say, did he do it or did he not? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. But, man, I saw some meme the other day, man. Someone in Roblox. You know Roblox, right, Matthew?
Yes.
They had the skin of Diddy in the white shirt and everything, and he was going around and grabbing people, man. And the guy who was playing the character, he kept on saying, "Ain't nothing like a Diddy party, ain't nothing like a Diddy party." And every time he grabbed someone and start walking around with them, dude, they would be going, "No, please!" It's they would actually be screaming like it was really Diddy. It was the funniest thing I had seen, because it had a caption above it. It said, "Meanwhile in Diddy's house," or something like that. It was hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. I don't play Roblox, but every once in a while there's a golden meme that comes out of Roblox that's just hilarious. I saw that when I was like, that is actually really funny and pretty on point. But let's see. Oh man, Melody said, "Ain't nothing like a Diddy party." Sounds way too close to something. Well, hell, I think Diddy did do that, so I guess that's kind of close to real life, I suppose. But still, Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I see some people talking about the meme and stuff. It was hilarious. I wish I could actually show it to y'all, but I don't know if YouTube would like that or not. But still, huge thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. At least the funny side of things, Grand Moff Clubby. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our next super chat is going to go to Neiman Bauer, who also threw in a super chat last night as well. And thank you very much, Neiman Bauer, for the long-lasting support, and we appreciate it very much. And he puts in a 20, and he said, I saw the speech of the UN yesterday, and it was one big joke. He said, like they are condemning Israel and not the not the bad people in Gaza or Lebanon, and our world is effed up, he said, and greetings from Austria.
And I would have to say hello once again to Austria. Great to know you're here with us again tonight. We always love to know that we have a great deal of everyone around the world, especially Europeans, considering that that's a large part of our Western alliance. But beyond that, I would agree the UN's pretty stupid with that. They'll come out and go, these Israelis fighting this unjust war. It's like, these people are proxies. Like, not to put it too on the nose where YouTube gets us in trouble, but they're not good people like that Israel's fighting. These people, we went to war with them for like 20 years. We had this whole thing in America called the War on Terror. Kind of like, the planet Earth, but, called Terror. But still, we had a war that we fought against a lot of these people. It's like, they're not nice people. Like, they're not people worth protecting. It's like, it's kind of like going out and condemning the British for going after pirates in the Caribbean. It's like, that makes no sense. But beyond that, I would have to say, thank God UN means nothing pretty much because they just run their mouths and nothing really comes out of it. But once again, remember that that's what the UN is. It's just amalgamations of stupidity coalesced into one unified form, and don't really put too much stock into it. It's always infuriating to listen to them, honestly, because they just say the stupidest stuff. And then also people will get out there and say things in front of the UN and act like they're making a difference. And anyone with a brain would know that anything said in front of the UN is wasted breath. That's what I know. Like, if I was ever asked, me personally, because there has actually been a couple of YouTubers in the sphere that have been asked to speak in front of the UN. I haven't seen a single person turn it down because it's kind of like their 15 minutes of fame, I suppose. So they go out there and they do it. But it's like, why? It's like, nothing has changed. I remember people did that like 2.5 years ago when the war had just started. Why, yes, I covered the war in Ukraine and I've seen terrible things. And it's like, guess what? After that speech was made, nothing changed and we're still here about 2.5 years later. What was the point of making it? It was literally just for clout or something like that. If anyone asked me, do you want to speak in front of the UN? I'd say, hell no. That's a waste of my time. I have more value in my time running this show than I would ever have going in front of the UN. Like, that's the honest truth. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And if anything I can impart to all of y'all here in the Lee Spring Army as kind of like an edict of the LSA is that the West is worth fighting for. It's worth dying for if need be. The West is an incredible place. But the UN is the most useless institution that's ever been made on the face of this earth. I don't want a single member of the LSA ever acting like the United Nations is a serious forum. It's a joke in the way it's structured, in the way it runs. It literally can't do anything. It's mired by its own bureaucracy. It's a completely pointless organization from head to toe. And so I never want a member of the LSA, if you are a member of the LSA, going around and saying things like, oh, the UN can do something, because they won't. The LSA entirely believes in the sovereignty of all of the independent nations of the world, and specifically the West, and their ability to take action collectively or individually to do something. That's how I would largely say an edict should go for the LSA on that kind of a topic. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, Neiman, because it's incredibly annoying to me that they do dumb stuff like that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Uncle Sam's Misguided Child, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much to the Misguided Child of Uncle Sam for that support. And he said, rock on, and to the bright light of Nepal, USA flag.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Uncle Sam's Misguided Child, and we will rock on to the brightest lights in Nepal, which actually would be the ongoing war. I'm just kidding. There's no war in Nepal, but wouldn't that be funny if there was? I'm just kidding. Wars are not funny. But beyond that, one thing I would like to say is, where's that mountain? Oh, here we go. Mount Everest, right here. So where is what is it, K51, Matthew? K2, something like that?
I'm not really sure. Also, by the way, did you see that like documentary that guy did of actually like climbing up Mount Everest? It was some guy on YouTube uploaded the whole thing. They have like makeshift ladders over the fissures and stuff, like get over like cracks in the glacier or whatever it is, the snow or ice packs or whatever. It was like treacherous as hell. I'm like, why would anybody go try to climb Mount Everest? Also, there was dead bodies that they couldn't get off the mountain up there in the death zone. There's a zone of death up there where if you don't get oxygen or something, you'll literally die in like a couple of minutes. I just don't understand the appeal of doing something like this. It's so dangerous.
It's the thrill of one more kill. The chance to tap out.
It's
Oh,
also
man.
nasty, man. Like it was so nasty. The guy was talking about how it smelled up there at like base camp, like the tallest base camp near the peak. It was nasty. Like they can't get the trash down from the place because it's too high. I just don't understand why anybody would go up this thing.
Yeah, I don't know, really. I mean, I have no clue either. And also, it's like, if you want to see like the view from here, couldn't you just fly over? Like it's the same altitude as a commercial airliner flies at. It's not like the views like unheard of for most people. Like you can literally just fly on a commercial airliner and almost get the same kind of view. So it's like, what's the point of that? I would generally say there is not one. But beyond that, moving on from that, I don't get the appeal of it either. Like I'm sure that a lot of thrill seekers really do enjoy it, and I'm sure for them it's a great thing, but I just don't really get it that much. It's like it was great when people were doing it for a first time ever, just to show that the will of mankind can overcome any obstacle and triumph. But it's like now it's just kind of like a tourist attraction. You got little conga lines going up to the peak. What's the point of that? And also, like Matthew said, there's tons of dead bodies up there. When you get to a certain altitude on Everest, there's a point where you literally cannot even stop to really do anything. You have to keep pressing forward, make it to the peak, and then turn around and go back because there's a limited supply of oxygen that you have on you. And once that runs out, you will die because the atmosphere at that altitude is so thin, you literally will not be able to breathe in enough oxygen to survive. So a lot of the people who die beyond that altitude, they're left because it would take too much energy and it would consume too much oxygen for a Sherpa to be able to grab that body and recover it. So they're left on the path where they are frozen forever from that point. And that's it's like that's kind of a bit of a morbid thing, and it's like, why in the world would people want to put such themselves in such a danger? Not a smart thing to me. But people still do it, and it's a free world, so people can do what they wish. I just don't think it's a smart thing, in my honest opinion. And so with that,
I wonder how much you had to pay for that whole experience, like to go get the death-defying experience of being able to climb the mountain and like suffer from altitude sickness, because you like suffer like really badly when you get up to the really high altitude. Like no matter if you have oxygen or not, like you're getting dizzy, you're having all the symptoms of being what is it, hypoxia or something like that. You're losing oxygen to the brain. How much does that cost, like for that whole experience?
I wonder. It probably costs thousands of dollars. Otherwise, a lot of Sherpas wouldn't be risking their lives to do it, really. But
Let's see,
yeah,
how much does it cost to climb Mount Everest? Let's see here. I'm curious. Oh my God.
how much?
Let's see.
It's got to be crazy, right?
You've got to be kidding me. What the hell? Like, you're kidding me. Like, okay, so it says climbers can expect to spend anywhere between $33,000 and $200,000,
What?
depending on the type of expedition. And oh my God, let's see. Wait a minute. It says the cost varies widely, ranging from $65,000 to $150,000. It includes the services of a Sherpa guided climb, plus sharing one or more tents. It says an average of $70,000 at least. My God, man, what are these people
could go to
crazy? Like they're
college.
spending. Really, it's like what are these people doing to like have like 75,000 laying around to go hike a mountain and then have to come back? It's like, what are they planning to go die on the mountain or something? That's crazy.
Dude, I would die after I saw the bill, dude. Like, I would survive the mountain climb and then drop dead of a heart attack after hearing the cost of it. That is insane. This
Wait, it says the permit fee to climb the mountain, what you pay to the country. It says it'll increase from $11,000 to $15,000.
What?
So you got to pay the government to climb the mountain? What the hell?
You see, that's what's, you know what, Matthew, that puts Mount Everest climbers in a whole new category for me. They're in the same category as Ocean Gate at this point with a Titan. Like, that's just a waste of money and putting yourself in great danger at incredible expense. Like, for 75 grand, you could do anything, like, at that cost. Now it's going to be like 80 grand. You could literally do anything at that amount of money. You could go anywhere, take a vacation that's over the top luxurious. Instead, you're gonna go pay 75 grand to possibly die in a mountain and smell shit for days. Like, that seems stupid to me. That's dumb. Like, I don't know about y'all, but like, there's a point where I say common sense ought to be overriding some people's judgment. Like, you know, people ought to be thinking a little, and that's just stupid to me that you pay that much money to go climb up a mountain and most likely maybe die, or have a terrible time to pay that much money. That makes no sense to me. Some people say,
And also, it's like, can't you get like a ticket on one of those like commercial rockets to go to space for like 250,000? It's like you could just like pay 50,000 extra if you're willing to pay 200K. It's like, what's an extra 50? It's like, just go to space instead.
yeah, or you could go join that goofball who went down to the Titanic and blew up a sub. What was his name? Well, let's see. What was that
I'm not
guy's
sure.
name? He was the guy who founded and owned Ocean Gate. The guy that now, after the inquiries come out, he was an absolute incompetent idiot.
I don't know his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I forgot his name too, but we have to explore the oceans. Honestly, man, when I heard him, he kind of sounded like Ben Shapiro a little bit. He was like, we have to explore the world's oceans. It's really nice down there. We can have colonies on the bottom of the ocean. Thanks. I was like, what is this guy, like Shapiro or something? I was like, and then people came out, man, in the inquiries, like people who got fired from the company, and they were like, oh, Stockton Rush, there we go, that's the guy, Stockton Rush, and this guy, man, was literally one of the most incompetent goobers ever. Like, he got the sub stuck on the Andrea Doria. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he got... So, do you know what the Andrea Doria is?
It's a shipwreck.
Yeah, it's a shipwreck of a luxury Italian ocean liner, pictured here. It sank in the 50s from the SS Stockholm, which is still in service to this day, crazily enough, the ship that sank this thing. But it sits on the bottom of the sea. It's not that deep, actually. I think it's like 500 feet or something like that. Where in the world's the wreck? Let's see. The wreck, the final outbound. Oh, yeah, there's the Andrea Doria listing hard to port after its collision. Well, actually, the starboard side, correction there. And there's the SS Stockholm, which was what sank it after the collision. But let me see here if I can find you some bits about the wreckage. Because, oh, here we go. This is a painting of how the Andrea Doria is sitting on the bottom of the sea. Divers actually go down to this wreck because it's not that deep. Let's see, it's in 160 feet of water. Well, it's 160 feet down to the actual side of the ship right here, so it's not that deep underwater. But they sent the Cyclops, which was like the pre-Titan submersible, very similar to it, but a little bit different. They sent it down there, and this wreck is incredibly dangerous because the currents in the water in this area are really fast, and a lot of divers have actually ended up getting tangled in the wreck, and something like 20 of them have died inside of the Andrea Doria because their oxygen hose would get caught on something or snagged, and they couldn't get up to the surface quick enough, or they get the bends and die anyways, so they die down there. Loads of people died. So this dumb idiot, Rush, which went against the advice of his own pilot who was on board the sub, and he was like, look, we can't go straight down on this thing. Rush sent the thing straight down onto the sub, onto the ship, and ended up getting it embedded into the side of the vessel and getting it stuck. And so then he started panicking and freaking out. And in the end of it, he got so freaked out, he grabbed the stupid PlayStation controller that's controlling this whole submersible. If the PlayStation controller gets broken, they're screwed. And he threw it as hard as he could at the head of the pilot who was trying to tell him, look, if I just run this thing, we can get out of here. He threw it at him full speed. And that's what the guy said in the inquiry, just that came out like a week ago or so. That guy was an absolute clown every single step of the way, and it's crazy to think that that guy actually led some company that pretty much doomed 5 people to their death at the bottom of the ocean because of incompetence for the large part. And also, there's so much more to go into there. I just highly recommend that y'all go and check out the board of inquiry that was brought up on this subject that is brought forward witnesses. Every single witness is laying out a horror story at this point about how that company was run by that guy and what led to that entire implosion at the bottom of the sea. But beyond that, the Mount Everest people are kind of in that category to me. It's like, why in the world would you pay this much money to get in that much danger and not really have a fun time? Makes no sense to me. But I guess people can do what they wish. And some people are like, they're climbers, it's their thing. Yeah, but you know, like, I'm a trained person, that's my thing, but you're not going to go see me buy like a brand new General Electric AC 4400 CW just for the hell of it. Like, that seems like a waste of money to me. I would rather spend it on something else if I had that kind of money. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for support, Uncle Sam's Misguided Channel, and helping us to keep on running. And of course, a very interesting rabbit hole to come out of that phrase. But thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Dimitro III, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Dimitro, for that support. And he put in simply an American flag and a Ukraine flag. And I love to see it, because America and Ukraine together again, like frog and toad. I love to see it. And thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Dimitro III. And I love to see Toad and Frog together again. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to John Bernard, who puts in a 10. And he said, could it be weather-related for the Wi-Fi issues? And my internet in Florida has been spotty. And it could be, John. It could be the hurricane coming up. I really didn't think about that earlier, but it could be. Honestly, though, I have a feeling it's probably something else, considering the fact that China did just hack our ISPs the other day, like across the country. That probably has something more likely to do with it, but it could be the hurricane, maybe. The weather has caused stuff like that before. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it probably can be. I'm not really sure yet. Seems as though at the bottom of my screen we're getting a hurricane update right now, but may or may not be. But possibly. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to some guy who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, some guy, for that support. He said, evil prevails when good men fail to act. And he said, go Poland.
And go Poland. That is absolutely correct. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, so that way we can keep on trying to say that evil prevails when good men fail to act, which is something that we say a lot in many different words. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Tester, who puts in a $10 donation and says, keep it up. Y'all have a great future.
And I hope we do have a great future here. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now running the stream. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Christopher Long, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Christopher, for that support as well. He said, with Israel planning to go into Lebanon, do you think they will stop with the war with Hamas to start this one? And I can't see any country being able to do two wars at once.
They probably will make the war with Hamas a really low-intensity kind of a war. They can't give up the area entirely, because that will just allow Hamas to pretty much rebuild at their speed however they choose. So they'll still have to keep kind of a low-intensity conflict, but it will require much less manpower, and they'll divert most of it up into northern Israel and into Lebanon. They can keep it going, but they will have to prioritize the Lebanese conflict over the Hamas one. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 support from Jay Bagwell. And thank you very much, Jay, for that support. And also, it's good to see you once again. And he has a fun exercise here, he says. He said, you are both granted $100,000 each to purchase two new vehicles, car, truck, SUV. Which two shall you pick? And great stream. I'll tell you what, I like this one a lot, because I like cars and I like all the stuff like that. So very cool. If I was granted $100,000 out of the blue, like the lottery or something like that, and I had to purchase two vehicles, first of all, I would purchase used, because that's the smartest thing to do, because depreciation on new vehicles these days is insane. You lose a ton of money literally driving the vehicle off the lot. So it'd be wise to buy used. But I would say if I had to get two new vehicles for $100,000 combined, I would probably go with like one truck and one sports car. That seems like a good combo, like a utility vehicle and also a fun vehicle. I would probably get maybe For the fun vehicle, for the sports car, maybe a Toyota Supra, the new one, which is basically a BMW, but it's a Toyota badge on it. Or for the truck, I would probably go with maybe just like a Ford F-150 or something, like a normal one, like nothing crazy. The Raptor's too expensive; it would exceed the 100,000. But probably like the Supra and a Ford F-150, to be honest. That would be what I'd pick. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, if I had to pick two vehicles, a very interesting question here. I would probably pick an SUV and a sports car, both used. Much like Matthew said, depreciation is insane on brand new cars, and there's not. And also, brand new cars are highway robbery these days. Even used cars are getting really expensive, so used cars would be the way to go. So I would probably get for the SUV, probably a Tahoe. Tahoes are pretty cool to me. I think they're neat and they look good, and you scare everyone because they think you're either a cop or you're with the Secret Service. So I like them for that reason, especially if you can get them all blacked out. But the other vehicle, if it was to get a sports car, let me think here. Little sports car. We want a cool one, but it's not expensive. Matthew, give me some ideas here. You know I'm not picking the cars.
So you can go with a muscle car type deal, like a Camaro, a Dodge Charger.
A Charger.
Charger?
I want a Charger, but not just any
A Charger,
Charger.
man, I'm shocked.
Man, I'm talking about that Simmons Charger, that ALC 42. Give it up, baby. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't get one of these. These are like millions of dollars, but I would not get a Charger in all honesty. Keep listing them off, Matthew.
So you got the European sports cars. You got like the little Audi, like S3 or something like that. Let's see. You got the BMW. You can get a used M3. Maybe the new M2 is too expensive. BMW might be off the list. Mercedes are probably off the list. They're too expensive. Let's see here. Toyota has a pretty cool little sports car called a GR86. It's a nice little, I think, a 4-cylinder. Pretty fun. Let's see.
I think I have to go with the Audi. Audis are pretty reliable.
There's a Subaru WRX. That's another one.
I would have to honestly go with the Audi S3. I mean, they're pretty reliable. I think they're good. So I would have to go with the Tahoe and then an Audi. That would be like my thing. Not really as robust as Matthew. Matthew's kind of going for the best of both worlds, but I kind of like SUVs. I think they're just really a good all-rounder, you know? Like, it's kind of like a mix of a car and a pickup at the same time, but you're not really going all one way or the other. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I know. A very interesting exercise if I really knew cars a lot, Jay, because I really don't know cars a lot. I know cars an okay bit. Really, the history of cars is kind of what I'm into the most, but not specific cars. And then I'm into planes a lot. I'm into trains, and also I'm into ships. But sadly, I'm just not really into cars enough to know a lot about them to know each model. So I hope that does answer it, although I had to get a lot of help from Matthew there. But still, a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I see a ton of people listing off stuff like somebody said an R35, which is, I believe that's a Nissan GTR. That's definitely out of the 100,000 range. I think that alone would be over 100K. Also, someone said the C8 Z06 track package. Depending on the year model, you might be able to pull that off. But if it's new, let's see, a C8 though. I think that's the, I don't know if that's the older generation Corvette or the new one. I really don't know. I'm not a huge Corvette fan, so I'm not sure. But anyways, unfortunately, do you have something I heard you clicking?
I had something for the next super chat that we were going to get. I was pre-pulling it up to take a look at it so I could talk about it, but please go ahead by all means.
So this one goes to Egg Again. Who puts in a 20 New Zealand. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said, talking about Turkey doing Turkey things, have you seen the Turkish army trigger guards? And love your work.
These are the anti-suicide trigger guards, as you can see right there. Stops them from pulling the trigger the other way. So that's a little interesting. It's on a G3 too. Not a bad rifle. Not my favorite. I think the FAL I like more, but still, yeah, that's kind of neat, man. You look at that. See, they got a little trigger guard right there. Stop you from
interesting.
Stop you from collecting on that life insurance. But still, it's kind of interesting right there. I have never seen that before. But I guess that is a Turkish thing. You join the army and you just go, man, fighting the enemy is good, but the alternative is fighting myself. That might even be better. And then the Turkish army has to actually make a modification to stop them from doing that. I don't know if that's a good thing to show that you're so scared of your own army off in itself. You got to put trigger guards on to stop them from doing that. I feel like that's a largely lack of confidence kind of a thing, but I've never actually heard of these before. These are new to me, but that is bizarre to see that actually was a thing for the Turkish army. I guess for a while, I suppose, but still, thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and supporting it, making this thing possible. And someone said, what happens when you're left-handed? Well, that's it for you. Lights out. No one's stopping you. Well, I guess that's it. That is what it is. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And very interesting thing to bring up. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I saw, excuse me, I saw Adam Glegg. He said, those little Audis are very nice. The RS3, RS4. See, the RS is the crazy fast one. Like, those are very expensive, by the way. They're small little cars, like basically the same size as a Volkswagen Jetta, but they have a crazy engine in it. I think it's like a 5-cylinder or something like that. It's a very fast engine, but the car is crazy expensive. I think it's like $80,000 for that little shoebox of a car, and you're basically paying for the engine, which is something that I've never been able to really fully understand, because you could get a lot more car for the money than the RS3. But it's neat, though. They have a really good exhaust. But anyways, moving on from the car talk, we are moving on to our next super chat, and this one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question, and we shall. Thank you very much, CK, for that support as usual. And the live chat question will go to, let's see here, AF Kaplan, who said, if Poland interceded on Ukraine's behalf without NATO's okay, could that get Poland kicked out of the NATO alliance?
It would not get them kicked out of the NATO alliance. There's really no way if they did anything offensively for them to be kicked out. So it's really a largely non sequitur issue from what I would know. That's at least in my opinion. I would have to research that a little bit more, but I don't think it would lead to them ever being considered to be kicked out of the alliance, because many countries have acted offensively in the past at such scenarios, and they've never been kicked out. They've been admonished sometimes, but never kicked out. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. Very good question, AF Kaplan, by the way, and thank you, CK Bull, for sponsoring that live chat as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Dark Warrior, as well. He said, as much as I am sick of seeing NATO do nothing, I can sort of understand trying not to start nuclear war over a small slap from a dying nation.
I could see it, but the thing is, though, is that, we could always say something like that. Like, everyone says China's going on the down and out. That's not really the case. They're having a tough time right now, but they're still going to be climbing upwards. Kind of like how America's having a tough time right now and has been for a while, but we're still climbing upwards in the numbers and the stats and everything. And that's something that we could always argue is, we won't react to anyone because they're a dying nation. If we keep having that idea, no one is going to be dying. They're just going to be thriving instead. And, that's kind of the issue, is that we keep on really letting everyone push the envelope because we act like, take the high road. And a lot of people need to understand, sometimes the high road isn't the thing we have to take. Sometimes we have to get down in the ditch and fight these people. Because if we don't, they're going to climb up out of that ditch. They're going to slit our throat one day, and then we're going to be really regretting we didn't get down in that ditch and fight them before they could climb up out of it. So that would kind of be my take. Like, I get it though. Like, no one wants to be the person who may possibly start a war. But if a war has to be started and it's over a good cause, I don't really see much wrong with that, to be entirely honest. And I know how it's going to go, Matthew. Someone's going to go out there and say, the enforcer's a warmonger. No, I'm not. But I'm just saying that there is stuff worth fighting for. And if you think that there is nothing worth fighting for, I won't mince words. You're a coward. You probably live your life where people run over you every day of the week because you're not willing to stand up for yourself and have a spine and say, I don't like something, or I don't like you for what you do. That is not a good way to live life. Like, I know a lot of people are starting to live like that these days, where no one has a backbone. And it seems that a lot of people are really trying to support that idea. And this is not just one group or the other. This is really everyone. Everyone doesn't have a backbone. Everyone loves to talk real big talk or act psychotic and stupid and idiotic, but no one actually has sense or a backbone hardly when it comes to things like this. Like, there is a reason. There is a point to go to war sometimes. Wars are just, in some instances, especially in acts of defense. And if we end up having to go to a war with Russia, but it's a war defending something of ours, then it's worth it. And there's no such thing as gambling away something and going, oh, well, fishing rights are something that we can give up. Because if you start letting them push that envelope, you're eventually going to have to get down to the things you don't want to give up. And then the war starts anyways. So why have any tolerance for it? Stop it at the beginning. If they fire at a fishing boat, start escorting fishing boats with warships. They want to shoot at them, then they're going to have a problem. They're going to get blown away. And then the Russians can whine and complain about that. But we did that in defense at that point. They were the ones who decided to die for that, and they can now regret that. That's how I look at it. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But with that, we are on to the next one. Also, MS Warrior, I did see it, and I actually removed the comment. It was some sort of a name for like a bar. This was kind of like making a pun on some candidates' names. That is largely political. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat, we have one from Brian Justin, and they put in a $20 donation. That's their first ever super chat on the stream, by the way. Huge shout out to you, Brian, for that support, and we appreciate it. First time ever. And he says, thanks for a fantastic live stream, and you two know your stuff. And also, thank you for the kind words.
And I thank you so much for the support, Brian Justin, to help this channel to keep on running. And thank you for saying that we know our stuff. Hopefully we do. I don't know everything, and sometimes we are wrong on stuff, and we're more than happy to correct it live on air if we are. But I got to thank you once again for making this channel possible and helping us to keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep this thing rolling. Also, I saw someone say, the problem with America is debt. In 25 years of spending like lunatics. I actually disagree. I don't think we've been spending that much. And I will actually show y'all the national debt clock. This is usdebtclock.org. This is the website everyone goes to for the national debt. And here it is, $35.4 trillion of national debt. That is a lot, isn't it? Now, let's go to who in the world do we owe this to? Well, we owe it, and I'll find it right down here. Let's see here. Let me make sure to go find it. Total person debt, bank interest. Where is it? Where is that part of the debt? And let's see here. Here we go. U.S. debt held by foreign countries. $8.3 trillion. That's not a lot. Like out of $35.4 trillion, $8.4 trillion isn't really that much at all. I mean, that's almost, that's only a small percentage of it. And that's really the most interesting thing about this is that most of the national debt isn't owed to foreign countries. It's actually owed by the U.S. government to intergovernmental agencies like the CIA, the FBI, the Internal Revenue Service, things like that. And that's actually the interesting thing because the United States government in our budgeting bills that we pass every single year, we give these intergovernmental agencies a certain amount of funds that they're supposed to work off of out of every year. If they don't spend it, they lose it. So what a lot of these intergovernmental agencies do is that they take out a form of a bond. I forgot what the exact bond is, but it largely holds the money that they didn't spend, and the government says that if you ever cash that in the future, we'll just give you that money. And it also collects interest. So that's really what most of the national debt is actually made up of, is intergovernmental bonds that are being held by intergovernmental agencies. So the real debt that we actually owe to foreign countries is only $8.4 trillion, which when you look at it that way, that's far more manageable than the overwhelming whopping number of $35.4 trillion, with most of that being owed to ourselves in different governmental agencies and not foreign nations. So I hope that kind of addresses that somewhat well. I mean, $8.4 trillion isn't great still, but that is really kind of what we're actually dealing with here. It's not $35.4 trillion that everyone in the world's going to come in and take a slice out of. If anything, people would only be trying to collect on $8.4 trillion. And then the real question is, who in the world's going to step up to the United States and have the gall to get their teeth smacked out for trying to collect on that money? Not really many people would do that. And so I hope that does kind of address that well. It's something that a lot of people overplay too much, and I hate it whenever it comes around to raising the debt ceiling. And a lot of people don't get that either. Like, the debt ceiling is a thing that gets raised. It's been getting raised as long as national debt's been around. It's never anything that people don't raise the debt on. And then people go, the national debt's going out of control! And it's like, it's always been going out of control, relatively. Like, back in the 30s, they were running political ads against FDR saying, look, the national debt is going skyrocketing high. It's going crazy. And it was like it's 60 billion or something. And back then, it literally looked like on the graph it was going to space compared to what it was. That's what it always looks like. So I hope that does address that well with the whole national spending thing, because we aren't really spending like crazy. It's just intergovernmental agencies taking out insane amounts of bonds, and then we don't really owe much to actual foreign lenders. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least on how I'm understanding this. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Sarge, for that support. He said, I love to see how this beautiful community has grown, and long live the LSA, and keep up... excuse me. And keep up the great work, boys, and smash that like and take one from the live.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment. And it is a beautiful community. And of course, long live the LSA. And thank you so much for wanting us to keep up the great work. And please, everyone, do smack that like button. That is in order. And with that, thank you so much once again. We will get a live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
So this one goes to Barry Woodward, who says, what criteria would allow Western allies to perform a preemptive strike against the evil's nuclear sites?
Let's see here, and let me make sure to go get that. What criteria? Really none, Barry. We actually have a purely defensive nuclear doctrine, so doctrinally we can never conduct preemptive strikes. We can only conduct retaliatory strikes in defense if one was to be conducted on us. So there really is, at the moment, no hypothetical scenario where we could conduct a preemptive nuclear attack on the Russians, or the Chinese for that matter. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Now, of course, we could completely throw doctrine to the wind and start smacking them, but that is really just a matter of issuing the orders and firing the missiles, and that's about it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, LSA Sergeant Figment, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Kachulian, for that support as well. They said the reason, and also, let's see, is this one okay to read? Can I read this one?
Let's see. I think that one, it's like borderline. Like, it's something I would almost say, but then it's like just I don't know. I'm really debating this one. Let me think about it really quickly. Well, yeah, you can read it. I think it'll be fine.
So this one from Kachulian says, the reason I hate the two-party system is because it's easy to divide the country and turn on itself, and we need less arguing and more compromise.
And I thank you for the support, Kachulian, and I would say that's largely true, but I don't really think the two-party system in its own sense is just like as a existing thing in America is a very bad thing, because for most of American history it's really been a two-party system almost since the beginning. And well, it hasn't really been, because the modern political parties really only started to exist around the 1840s and 50s, and of course America existed for about a good 80 years before that, 60 years really, but beyond that, these parties pretty much have existed throughout all of history, and they haven't really been that detrimental or devastating for the country. Some people are going to say, well, what about the Civil War? The Civil War was more so not about the parties, but more so about the underlying issue of slavery, which was just something entirely different. It kind of played into the parties at the time, but the parties weren't the things that caused it. It was more so the social differences in between the South and the North at the time, and also the economic and legal differences as well that created the institute of slavery down here. But beyond that, the political parties have never really been that destructive, at least a two-party system, until very recently, because of the rise of what I would say is radicalism, reactionism, or extremism, either one of the three. And we've been seeing that on the rise greatly on both sides. Both sides at this point are willing to destroy the institution of democracy to ensure that democracy exists only in the way that they see it fit. That's really how it's ended up turning out. And that is really being caused by foreign interference. And that's why I don't really like it when people like Orban or Zelenskyy come over here and start sanctioning and supporting different parties, because they only help to further fuel this extremism. Because now they're attaching things like, oh, Hungary believes that the savior of mankind is this guy. Vote for him or everyone will die. And then Zelenskyy comes over and goes, the savior of Ukraine is this person. Vote for them or we'll all die. You know, it's like, this is not what should be allowed. Like, this should be condemned by everyone. Like, if someone, like, if Zelenskyy came over and I was running for president and he was still the president of Ukraine, and he said, I think the enforcer is a great guy, I would say, why the hell did you even say that? And I don't support your endorsement. I would, because I would say that's not your place to come over here to this country and try and sway the election, even if it's going to be in my favor. That's not your role. You go back over to Ukraine. You can do whatever you want. You can ask for whatever you want. But if you come over here and try and support me or the other person, I condemn that 100%. You don't have a right to do that. Much like we don't have a right to go over to Ukraine and say, hey, y'all need to throw Zelenskyy out. I don't really think he's good for Ukraine. That's what I don't like. It's that kind of a foreign influence that is driving people to extremism. It's more so Russian and Chinese led, but then everyone else these days, like Hungary, like Ukraine, wants to come over here and start acting like they can have a say. And hell no, they don't have a say. I'm all fine for supporting them in this war and supporting our interests, but once again, the line's drawn when they feel comfortable enough to come over here and start telling people who to vote for. That's where I draw the line. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because I don't think the two-party system is bad. It's not the most effective thing, and it's not the best thing out of all the hypotheticals, but it's kind of what we have in America, and it's never been that bad until really the past 10 or 12 years or so, really, in my opinion. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to White Quill, who puts in a 5 and says, did you know that Turkey wants to be known as Turkaya by all countries, regardless of local accents?
Yeah, they actually put that on Google. I refuse to call them that. I just call them Turkey. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Carl Buckland, who puts in a 5 and says, who fertilized the fields they want? Slav Ukraine.
Miracle Grow. I gotta thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. I'm not really sure what that question is asking, but I still thank you for the support nonetheless. And of course, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to DJ Waffle, who puts in a 5 and says LSA and Slav Ukraine.
And LSA and Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for support, DJ Waffle, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Big Daddy J, who puts in $2 $5 donations. Thank you very much, Big Daddy J, for that support. He said, I would like you to consider, as I know you've addressed it before, showing a comparison of losses to date, and I don't trust other sources at this point. And thank you.
Sadly, we don't have a good Ukrainian loss record. The Ukrainians don't make it public much, and the Russians also completely lie on the loss report about the Ukrainians. So we really don't have a good comparison on the amount of losses the Ukrainians have taken compared to the ones the Russians have taken, unfortunately. So I would largely have to declare ignorance on that one due to a lack of statistics and data to be able to give a comparison there. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the Big Daddy J said in the second one, what are your subs versus hot doga?
Oh man, well, we ended up beating that fella a while ago, and so let's see here. Oh, hey, Matthew, we got mentioned. Hey, we got mentioned on a community post 7 hours ago. Yeah, man, legendary. I love to see it. Let me see here. What in the world does it say?
I'm not good at math. But I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 times as many subscribers or something like that. We're not even in the same ballpark anymore. It's ridiculous.
Oh man. Dude, oh goodness, man, he's absolutely ratioing us. He got 334 likes on this community post. I love to see it.
Holy moly!
Holy moly! That's the most viewer interaction that he's gotten in 5 years. Like, it's a dude, crazy. But he's got 67,000 subs. They'll soon drop down to 66, I'm sure of it. And we have about, I think we're about like 50 shy of 275,000. So do the math. I'll actually do the math here. Let's see here. 275 divided by 67. So we have 4.1 times the amount of subs that guy has. So, oh man, they're irrelevant. Oh man.
And our subscribers are actually active. They're not just subscribers who've been laying around for years who probably don't even get on YouTube anymore.
Also, Matty, I like how the idiot says, I can't wait for Twitter to remove the block feature. Like, he didn't have us blocked for like 6 months or something himself. It's like, okay. It's like, cool. It's like, yeah, it doesn't, like, it's like, it doesn't really matter to me whether the guy can see what we're saying or not, because it's not really like the guy's intelligent. I mean, he has about the same IQ as a goldfish, so it's like, do I really care if the goldfish can read what we put out on Twitter and talk about it? It's like, no. It's like, you know, he's literally a loser. Like, why would I care? Like, Anyways, with that, I can't wait for another hit piece. Make another one. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does answer that well, Big Daddy J. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Martin261, who put in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Martin, for that support, by the way. He said, I had the idea that Ukraine could combine used EV batteries and glide packages to set Russian targets on fire that wouldn't be extinguished for days.
That's an interesting idea. They could do something like that. We don't know how effective that would be, but incendiaries really are proving to be very effective on the front lines, so maybe long-range incendiaries would also prove to be as effective, possibly. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kachulian343 once again, who puts in a 5 this time, and says, mine's Lake Erie, because the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot.
And thank you for the support, Kachulian. And I'd have to say, very cool. And Lake Erie is, I think, where, yeah, it is where the Edmund Fitzgerald went down. Where is Whitefish Harbor? Where is that? When they could make it to Whitefish Harbor. Is it down here? Nah, it can't be down there. Where in the world was that? I'll be damned. I can't really remember where that was. I'll look for it a little bit more and try and find it. But yeah, the Edmund Fitzgerald did go down somewhere here. I just don't know where. Or did it go down up here in Lake Huron? Nah, I don't think it went down here. Yeah, I think it did go down in Lake Erie. I don't really know. Wait, it's Superior. It went down in Lake Superior. Let's see here. Whitefish Harbor. Oh, there's Whitefish Point. So Whitefish Harbor has to be somewhere around. Yeah, Whitefish Bay. There we go. That's where this is kind of where they were. But still, beyond that, it is pretty cool, the Edmund Fitzgerald. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, making this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Carl Buckland once again. He puts in a 5 and says, a big hurricane heading for me in Dixie County, Florida, and hope to catch up in a few days and roll on without me bros.
And we will, but I wish you the best of luck. I hope you stay safe down there. We'll also be getting a little bit of it, but not the brunt of it like y'all will be down in Florida. But I hope that things go well for y'all down there nevertheless, and everyone stays safe, and hopefully no houses get any kind of flood damage. That's wishing for too much right there. Many will, but still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from the Rubberman 2836. And thank you very much for that support. They said that they should issue pagers to all Russian troops so they can communicate.
Yes.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Spread them amongst the ranks and make sure to give them fanny packs that hold them right over their balls. But beyond that, I got to say, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Real News Network once again, who puts
Naresh!
in another massive $50 donation. Thank you very much, Naresh, for that support. He said, I just saw the live feed, and the storm is a monster. And just in case, I want you to have enough supplies, and in my humble ways. And thank you very much, Naresh, for that support, by the way. The storm looks like it will be a monster. I have a subtle suspicion in the back of my mind that this Category 4 might turn into a Category 5. I don't know why I think that, but I have a feeling it might be the big one. It seems to be pretty rapidly intensifying, which is not a good sign. But thank you very much for that support once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
Booyah! But beyond that, again, thank you so much for the support. And thank you for wanting us to stock up on supplies. Hopefully we won't have to. I bet it will probably be a lot lighter up here than it will be down there on the coast. But I hope that everyone on the coast has a safe time, because it's going to be a really, really tough one, even if it is a Cat 4 and it moves up to a Cat 5. That's still really rough nevertheless. So with that, huge thanks to you once again, Real News Network. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to You Don't Know GXBX, who puts in a 5 and says, can we get a rabbit hole on the Soviet-Afghan war? Long live the LSA, and I wear the LSA patch when I go play Airsoft. It gives +10 on the drip.
Hey! I love to hear it. I love to hear it. That's really cool that you wear the LSA patch. I love that. I was hoping people would. But beyond that, I can give a little itty-bitty rabbit hole on the Soviet-Afghan war. I actually made a video on this way back in the day. I think it's still up on the channel. But beyond that, and by the way, y'all, it's actually the first video ever put out on this channel, just for y'all to know. But beyond that, way back in the day, there was a guy in charge of Afghanistan called Hafizullah Amin. And considering that there was an Islamic overthrow of the Iranian government in Iran, it was feared that the Afghan government was going that way, and that could start to affect the heavily Islamic populations of the southern Soviet Union and could probably lead to uprisings and revolts against the Soviet government. So in a preemptive attempt, they tried to ensure that they would be able to... Jeez, man. The Aral Sea is dead empty now. Like, there's not even any water at all anywhere. That's crazy. Anyways, moving on from that, though. Anyways, they were scared that that was going to create uprisings within the southern Soviet Union. So what they did is that they sent in a hit team into Kabul to assassinate Hafizullah Amin, and then they started rolling Soviet forces across the border. They captured the capital, they captured most of the major cities and the highways in between, and for the next 10 years, the Soviets would sit in a hellfire, pretty much, against the Mujahideen, which was the fighters in the area at the time. They would turn into the Taliban later. And over those 10 years, they were never really able to fight effectively against the Mujahideen because they were using conventional tactics against an unconventional force or an asymmetrical force. They ended up losing the war, and it also ended up, due to perestroika and glasnost being brought forward by Gorbachev a little bit later on in the war, around 81, the Soviet public was able to heavily criticize the war in the leadership of the Soviet government, and it's said that the Soviet war in Afghanistan actually led largely to the collapse of the Soviet Union, at least the lack of the national will to keep the Soviet Union alive, because it became very clear that there was probably better alternatives outside the Soviet Union independently. So with that, I hope that does give a really good annotated rabbit hole on that the best I can. I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Jody Mandelias once again, who puts in a 5 and says, a $5 tip for impersonating the old school broadcaster and LSA forever.
And I have to thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is people like you who help us to be able to say, attention everybody, calling all towns and villages, beware! You better lock up your doors today, because Abu Hassan is on his way.
But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for enjoying that. I always love to do funny little voices here and there. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to DJ Waffle, who puts in a 5 and says, listen, can we get an update for us late to the stream?
Yes, Israel is going to be invading southern Lebanon. Poland has threatened direct military intervention if the Russians hit a nuclear power plant. The Ukrainians have been doing well in Kursk. The Ukrainians have held the Russians back in Pokrovsk. Things are going well across the board. And I hope that does give a pretty good recap of everything that happened today. Huge thanks to you once again, DJ Waffle, for the support and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a 5. He says, Secretary Blinky says, oh man, that fly. Baba, moo, quack, meow. Man, I'll tell you what, Secretary Blinky, I'm not sure what he's saying these days, but he's not saying a lot. But thank you very much, Duncan, for that support as always, and the animal noises. And we also have a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment, once again. And he said, LSA hit the like button. That's an order.
And that is an order. Hit that like button, folks. We've gotten up to 3,300 likes, an incredibly good number. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Oleg, USAC, who puts in a 2 and says, thank you for the show and keep up the good job.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying the show. And thank you so much for saying, keep up the good job. We try our best, and I hope that we were able to do so tonight. And so, huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2 and says, for the Pimp Marmot Fund and LSA.
Hey, and that mama do be pimping Bruce Lee. And I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible, and I help the marmot to stay pimping, governor. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the Morse code decoders and the live chats. Due to time constraints tonight, considering that we're almost running over time, we're going to be answering the Morse code decoders, 3 live chats, and rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. I don't know if I missed it or if the live or the Morse code didn't come in, but I did not get it tonight. So we'll have to move on from that and move on to our first live chat question. And this one goes to Stevie Mack, who says, how do you think Israel will go with the ground incursion into Lebanon, as in 2006, it didn't go very well?
They're probably going to go like they did inside the Gaza Strip, very slowly and very methodically, probably searching for tunnels and trying to destroy them along the way. So it will probably be a campaign of superior firepower. I'm not exactly sure how the ground invasion went in 2006, but usually superior firepower seems to be the answer to most of Israel's issues these days, and they've been using it to great effect. They've also been using intelligence to a great effect as well, probably a lot more effectively than they were in 2006, and that may help them a lot more on finding out where Hezbollah may be popping up and destroying them before they can actually cause any damage to the Israeli armed forces in that area. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in what I would assume they're probably about to do. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Char G, who says, would it be a good idea for Ukraine to strike military vehicle repair depots?
Absolutely. That is a major part of the logistics of the Russian army. Striking those kinds of depots denies them the ability to make functional, non-functioning vehicles. So even just basic wear and tear could end up being a detriment to the Russians, a severe one, because there's no way to repair those vehicles and get them back into running order. So yes, mechanical depots are a priority target in the logistics structure for the Ukrainians to try and get. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is W13RD guy. He says, Putin says now that a strike on Russia supported by a nuclear power will be treated as a joint strike. And what does that mean?
It really just is the saber rattling that the Russians have been doing for a while. That's Putin trying to come up with a more elegant way, I guess, of putting that. It still means nothing, really. And so I would generally say doesn't really mean much. In actual theory, though, it means that if Ukraine struck Russia with, say, an ATACMS missile, the Russians are going to treat that as an attack from the United States, and then they're going to respond in a nuclear form against Ukraine and America and pretty much everyone else in NATO, meaning they'll be starting Armageddon over in ATACMS, which certainly will not be happening. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Big shout out to Bruce Lee, by the way, who threw in $1.50 super chat, and it has a peach. Hey, that's a nice peach right there. I like to see it. But beyond that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I got to thank everyone so much once again for supporting this channel tonight, much like Bruce Lee did. And I also got to thank everyone for watching tonight. We've had 70,000 people watch this stream at this point, and at the peak, there was about 10,000 people here. I got to thank you all once again for that, because if it wasn't for all of y'all watching the stream, we wouldn't be able to have one to be running. We would still run it, but y'all give it so much purpose and make this thing worthwhile. And so we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, good night to you all. And once again, huge shout out for another great stream tonight. Even though we had the lag in the beginning, thank you all for sticking with us through the lag and working through it, because it annoys us as much as it annoys y'all. But with that, hopefully we're lag free tomorrow. And be sure to join us tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for our next night of War News streaming. And also maybe midday tomorrow for a video as well, weather permitting. If the Wi-Fi and the power is on, that's going to be the standard from this point forward if we have power and Wi-Fi. So be safe during the hurricane for everyone that's going to be hit by it tomorrow, and we'll see you all then. And Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and get some rest and good night.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.